Chapter 1614. Everything here seemed to have defied common sense. Gravel floated in the void, and endless astral winds were produced in the void. Gu Xingyin looked down, and she seemed to exist in the void. The scene under her feet was exactly the same as the scene above her. There was clearly an endless void under her feet, but she seemed to be stepping on solid ground. All of this felt very novel. But in the midst of novelty, there was often endless danger. The moment Gu Xingyin entered the space crack, the power in her body automatically formed a transparent shield around her, protecting her whole body. Those astral winds and gravel could not reach her, but Gu Xingyin could clearly feel the power contained in them. It was very powerful. Gu Xingyin was very clear that if she had just been born, she would have been turned into dust on the spot if she encountered such power. There was no path in the void. But Gu Xingyin seemed to be guided by something, and she walked forward in a direction. Since there was no path, she naturally could not see the end. Gu Xingyin did not know how far she had to walk to get out of this space crack, but she knew that as long as she walked forward, there would definitely be an exit. As long as she walked to that exit, she would know everything, including finding that man. Her steps were very slow. It wasn't because she did it on purpose, but because the astral winds and gravel from the void, as well as the invisible pressure, were hitting her like a huge mountain. She had no way to speed up and walk forward. Moreover, with every step she took, Gu Xingyin could feel that the pressure from the void was increasing. Every step she took was more difficult than the previous one. After walking for an unknown period of time, she knew that she had reached her limit. At this time, her clothes and sleeves had already been torn to shreds by the astral wind that had penetrated in. Her hands had also been cut with streaks of blood. Her breathing was somewhat stifled. She lifted her feet, but there was no way for her to take another step forward. Gu Xingyin raised her head and looked ahead. There was still nothing there, and no one knew how far it was. Gu Xingyin didn't know either, but she could feel that there was no exit in front of her. This road was very, very long. She stopped walking, turned around resolutely, and began to walk back. She had never thought that she would be able to walk out of here in one go. After experiencing the oppressive and destructive forces that were getting stronger and stronger, the way back became extremely easy. The pitch-black spatial crack had always existed in this pure white space, becoming the only color in this space. Until Gu Xingyin stepped out of the room. The moment she left, the black crack disappeared without a trace. The space in front of Gu Xingyin turned into a void again, as if the previous devouring crack had never existed. However, Gu Xingyin lowered her head and looked at her sorry appearance. All this proved that everything just now had really happened. With a thought, she changed her clothes in an instant, and the wound on her arm healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. It seems that I still have a long way to go. She sighed softly. Looking back at the system, which had been guarding the same place, Gu Xingyin's gaze softened. Continue to complete the mission, system. Yes, host. Chapter 1615. When Gu Xingyin woke up, she felt that her surroundings were very noisy. She subconsciously shouted, "Be quiet." Sure enough, the surroundings quieted down. Gu Xingyin woke up. She raised her head and looked around. She realized that she was in a classroom. The students around her were all looking at her. Looking at the lively scene, it should be the end of class. After class, others were chatting while she was sleeping. She even yelled at others. Gu Xingyin was embarrassed. She decisively pretended to be sleepy and turned to face the wall to sleep. System, transfer memory. She said. Soon, she knew the plot of this time. The original Mo Bay was the school hunk of Chuan Nan First Middle School. That's right, the original Mo Bay was the school hunk. If Gu Xingyin wasn't sure that this body of hers was that of a real woman, she would have been shocked. What happened next made her feel helpless. Mo Bei's mother gave birth to a boy and a girl, a pair of twins. The older brother was Mo Bei and the younger sister was Mo Beiyen. 3 months later, the older brother, Mo Bei, died of a high fever. Mo Bei's mother was a very typical old-fashioned woman. She favored boys over girls and was afraid that she would lose her status in the family without a son. Coupled with the death of her son, whom she had high hopes for, she might as well go all the way. She concealed this matter and lied to the public that the one who died of a high fever was her daughter, Mo Beiyen. Then, Mo Beiyen became Mo Bei. Mo Bei was raised as a boy. Mo Bei's mother was very strict with her. When she was in kindergarten, she even sternly warned her not to go to the toilet with other children. Mo Bei listened to her mother, so her identity was never discovered. It wasn't until junior high that she learned the difference between boys and girls. She ran back and asked her mother why she was different from what the book said. Mo Bei's mother answered her like this: "Your brother is dead, so you have to live in his place. Remember, don't let others know that you're a girl. Otherwise, you and I will be kicked out of the Mo family." The young Mo Bei didn't quite understand these words, but she still felt sad because of the meaning behind her mother's words. She was living in her brother's place. She also did not understand. Her father clearly doted on her very much, but her mother said that her father would chase them out. However, she was still very obedient. She didn't tell anyone about this, including her father who loved her dearly. In the second year of junior high school, her mother got pregnant again and gave birth to a younger brother. Mo Bei's mother's attitude towards her son was completely different from her attitude towards Mo Bei. Mo Bei had never seen his mother look at him with such a gentle gaze, and he had never heard his mother tell him bedtime stories. Compared to her younger brother, she did not seem like her mother's child at all. But at this time, she wouldn't ask anything. That was until he entered high school. Mo Bei, who already had a mature ability to think, slowly understood why his mother had done that all those years ago. She had raised him as a son only to consolidate her position in the Mo family. She had always been thinking about her brother who had only lived for 3 months in this world. Mom doesn't like her. She was even certain that if her mother could choose between her and her brother to die, that person would definitely be her. Chapter 16:16. By the time Mo Bei found out about this, it was already too late. She had lived as the son of the Mo family for 17 years. Whether it was her father, her younger brother, or her teachers and classmates. Everyone thought that she was a boy. Mo Bei didn't even know how to tell her father that she was actually a girl. She was sure that her father loved her. It was because of this that she cherished her father's love even more. She was afraid that she would receive a disappointed look from her father after the matter was made public. As for Mo Bei's mother, after giving birth to her youngest son, she put all her heart and soul on him. She didn't care about the daughter that she had made into this state. She was so cold that it made one's heart turn cold. After a period of confusion and helplessness, Mo Bei simply chose to give up on himself. He began to let loose in school, flirting and fighting in school. Every time she saw her father's disappointed look, she felt extremely guilty. However, after her guilt, she gave up on herself even more. She had no idea how she was going to go on in the future. Was she really going to keep this a secret for the rest of her life? Before Mo Bei could think of a solution, she provoked someone that she shouldn't have. The school belle, Wuxia. Wuxia was a very beautiful girl. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been called the school belle in Chuannan First High School, which was known to be full of beauties. Wuxia and Mo Bei met at a basketball game. Mo Bei was handsome and agile. He had always been a member of the school's basketball team, while Wuxia was the school's manager. In the beginning, the two of them were just ordinary friends. Wuxia had always held a trace of unclear feelings towards Mo Bei. In fact, it was very normal. In the pure school days, the little thoughts that sprouted in the minds of boys and girls were basically based on looks and studies. At that time, Mo Bei was still a cold, arrogant, and unapproachable top student. This kind of boy was the most sought after by girls in school. Later on, Mo Bei realized that he was a person who had been deceived and abandoned by his mother. He began to let loose. He dyed his hair and pierced his ears. He was no longer as cold as before and became obedient and evil. If it was a sloppily dressed and unimpressive-looking boy, he would probably be scoffed at by many people. But when the person who did this was Mo Bei, who came from a good family and had exquisite and handsome looks, the girls who looked at his face felt that the previously aloof school hunk was very handsome, but now that he had become devilishly charming, he was even more charming. Yuqingyue was captivated by this side of Mo Bei. She mustered up her courage and confessed to Mo Bei. At that time, Mo Bei's mind was at its most chaotic. Normally, she would have rejected Yuqingyue without hesitation. But at that time, she was at a stage where she hated everything around her. Hearing Yuqingyue's confession, she actually didn't reject it. However, she didn't accept it. She just didn't explicitly reject it. It was this vague feeling that made Yuqingyue unable to extricate herself. When Mo Bei finally came back to his senses and saw Yuqingyue, he planned to ask her out for a chat and reject her. However, Yuqingyue was not as easy to talk to as expected. When she heard Mo Bei's words, she instantly felt that she had been fooled. Yuqingyue's background wasn't simple. She slammed the table and stood up on the spot, saying that she wouldn't let her off. Chapter 16-17. Mo Bei did not take Yuqingyue's words to heart. In her heart, Yuqingyue had always been a sweet and gentle girl. She did not think that he would do anything to her. However, she had been too naive. After school that afternoon, she was stopped by a group of gangsters. It turned out that Yuqingyue's identity was not like what her classmates thought. She was just a simple rich girl. Her father was the leader of the underground kingdom in Chuannan City. She went home crying and said that she had been dumped. She asked her brother to stand up for her. Yuqingyue knew her limits. She did not tell her father about this and only told her brother. She was still a kind person. She only asked him to teach Mo Bei a lesson and not to hurt anyone. Her brother didn't think much of it. He just casually ordered a few people to teach that Mo Bei a lesson. Unfortunately, the gangsters wanted to show off their abilities in front of young Master and young Mississippi. They stopped Mo Bei and beat him to death. Amidst the chaos, Mo Bei's head hit the wall, and he lost his life just like that. Gu Xingyin felt a headache coming on after reading the whole story. She lowered her head and looked at herself. Ripped jeans and a black leather jacket. It was obvious that Mo Bei had started to let himself go. "What time is it now?" Mo Bei asked the system. The system replied, Mo Bei met Yuqingyue in the afternoon to have a showdown. If nothing goes wrong, the host will be stopped after school today. Gu Xingyin, she felt a headache coming on. To be honest, this story had nothing to do with Yuqingyue. She felt that she had been tricked and wanted to teach the scumbag a lesson. This was not a big deal. It was just that this lesson went wrong and the person who was taught a lesson died. It could only be said that fate made a fool of people. "System, draw a skill," Gu Xingyin said. On the desk in front of her, a white light that no one could see flashed. Then, something appeared in Gu Xingyin's mind. "Congratulations, host. You have received training basics." Gu Xingyin's eyes lit up. She stared at the system without blinking. "I've realized that I'm liking you more and more, system." She even suspected that the system had cheated for her. Body tempering basics was a very basic body tempering technique in the world of sword cultivators. Even though it was called a foundation, it was only relative to sword cultivators. After all, if one cultivated this technique to its peak, they could even reach the realm of breaking boulders with their bare hands. Of course, in this modern world where martial strength was relatively low, the power of this body refining technique would be greatly reduced. Gu Xingyin felt the strength in his body, which was only slightly stronger than ordinary people, and his body was more agile. But it was enough. At least, Gu Xingyin felt that she would not be so passive in a fight. Gu Xingyin, who was in the midst of her joy, did not notice that the system's white light had strangely stiffened for a moment when it heard the words "I like you more and more." The system remained silent and hid in a corner. It expressed that the host's words really made the system tremble. It did not want to be blamed for some random jealousy. Chapter 16-18. Gu Xingyin's deskmate, Chen Jun, was chatting with the people behind him. He turned around and was about to take a sip of water when he saw Gu Xingyin's joyful smile. He was stunned by this smile. Mo Bei was very good-looking. Chen Jun had always known this. Otherwise, he would not have become the school hunk of South Sichuan. Mo Bei's good looks were not the typical sunny and handsome kind of boys. Instead, his facial features were so beautiful that they could be called exquisite. He was like a handsome young man who walked out of a Japanese manga. It was just that Mo Bei was too cold in the past, and recently, Mo Bei was too strange. This was not the first time Chen Jun saw Mo Bei's smile, but in the past, he always felt that there was something heavy under his deskmate's smile. The corners of his mouth were curled up in a smile, but his eyes were haunted by a sinister aura that wouldn't go away. This was the first time that Chen Jun had seen such a pure smile on Mo Bei's face ever since they became deskmates. A happy smile appeared on the young master's clean and bright face. Even his eyes seemed to be shining like stars. Chen Jun suddenly felt his face turn red and his heart beat faster. He turned his head away in a panic and took a big gulp of water to calm the sudden heat in his heart. I finally know why this guy is so popular with girls, Chen Jun thought. Chen Jun thought. With such an appearance, even men would be shaken for a moment. Chen Jun was sure that he was straight, so he could only blame the other party for being too attractive. Have you done your homework? A voice suddenly came from Gu Xingyin's side. Gu Xingyin looked up at the boy beside her. He was wearing a pair of glasses and had a delicate face. He looked very gentle. A name flashed in Gu Xingyin's mind, Chen Jun Mo Bei's deskmate. Their relationship was average. But homework? Gu Xingyin was dumbfounded. Chen Jun sighed when he saw the blank look on his deskmate's face. It's the 7th period. The math teacher will definitely check your homework. If you don't do it, you'll be punished again. One after another. Clearly, Mo Bei had been treated like this before. Chen Jun didn't know why he suddenly opened his mouth to warn Mo Bei. Although he and Mo Bei were deskmates, their relationship was no different from strangers. Perhaps, his smile just now was too contagious. While Chen Jun was still in a dilemma, Gu Xingyin had already recalled the signature Mediterranean hairstyle and the typical serious face of a math teacher. Looking at the dazzling white summer sun outside, Gu Xingyin decisively reached out her hand to Chen Jun. Lend me your homework. Ah. Chen Jun was still in a daze. I'll copy it. During math class, Gu Xingyin was indeed given special attention. However, she handed over the workbook in her hand with a smile. The math teacher looked at it suspiciously a few times. After confirming that it was her own notes, he nodded in satisfaction. It was rare for him to praise her, and he began the lesson. Gu Xingyin heaved a sigh of relief and began to stare blankly. After school, Gu Xingyin said to Chen Jun, I have something to do today. I'll treat you to milk tea tomorrow. Thank you. Hey. Chen Jun wanted to say something, but Gu Xingyin had already disappeared. Although she had the skills provided by the system, Gu Xingyin still chose to take a different route. After all, it was better to avoid a situation like one against many. Unfortunately, the plot didn't allow her to hide whenever she wanted to. Gu Xingyin looked at the people surrounding her and couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 1619. She carried her backpack with one hand and looked at the people in front of her. She frowned and said, "What do you want?" The leader was a young man with a buzz cut. He was wearing a hip-hop shirt and had a cigarette in his mouth. The people around him were all dressed in the same way. It was obvious that they were hooligans. However, although they tried their best to pretend to be ordinary hooligans, Gu Xingyin could tell their background from how they blocked all her escape routes without batting an eyelid. Normal gangsters wouldn't be as orderly as this. The buzz-cut young man spat out the cigarette in his mouth and stepped on it in a very appropriate manner. "You are Mo Bei." The buzz-cut young man looked at Gu Xingyin from head to toe. After sizing him up, he had to admit that this kid was quite good-looking. It was normal for girls to like him. It was no wonder that Missy would fall for him. However, he dared to play with Missy's feelings. He had not seen many people who did not care about their lives. The buzz-cut young man said lazily, "What do I want?" "Of course, I want to beat you up." After saying this, he did not waste any more time and directly raised his hand. "Go, don't cripple him. Don't care about the rest, just beat them up." Gu Xingyin reacted quickly. She swung her backpack with one hand and flipped the person who attacked her from the left. Then, she threw her backpack and began to beat them up. This group of people was not too much. At least they were bare-handed. If they had knives on them, she was afraid that she would not be able to escape today. "Hey, you have some skills." The buzz-cut young man's eyes lit up when he saw Gu Xingyin's moves. However, although his eyes were bright, he did not relax his hands at all. 1 against 12. Even though Gu Xingyin's body had been strengthened and her movements were much more agile, it was inevitable that she would be injured. However, she was only injured. The people opposite her were the ones who were screaming miserably. A total of 12 people were almost all thrown to the ground by her. They lay there crying for their parents. The buzz-cut young man was not spared either. He was half-squatting on the ground, clutching his stomach. The dull pain was still there, making it impossible for him to straighten his back. From the looks of it, Gu Xingyin, who was leaning against the wall, only had some bruises on the left side of her face. She had the upper hand. "You can do it," the man with the buzz cut said. Initially, when he saw Gu Xingyin's frail body, he thought that she was just a weak student. He did not expect her to be so good at fighting. Looking at Gu Xingyin like this, a feeling of admiration arose in his heart. Gu Xingyin saw that there was no malice in his expression. She heaved a sigh of relief. She knew that people like them who mingled in the underworld paid the most attention to ruthlessness. Their reasoning was also very crude, but they admired those who could fight. Only when both sides were convinced could they have a good chat. She didn't answer the buzz-cut man's question. Instead, she asked calmly, "Now, can you tell me why you're bothering me?" The man with the buzz cut didn't hide anything. "Who told me to provoke our miss? Do you know Yu Qingyue? She's our miss. You played with her feelings. If we don't beat you up, how can our miss feel at ease?" Actually, the man with the buzz cut said this out of helplessness. He did not intend to hide this from Mo Bei. According to their words, even if they beat you up, they had to let you know why you were being beaten. However, the development of the situation was somewhat different from what he had imagined. Chapter 1620. The man with the buzz cut had originally imagined that he would lead his men to beat up this gigolo and then say domineeringly, "Remember, this is the price you have to pay for offending our missy, Yu Qingyue." Then, he would leave suavely. However, it was obvious that the person he was looking for now was not the right person. His domineering declaration could only turn into an unimposing clamor. Gu Xingyin already knew what they were here for. She had only asked this question to ensure that things would go as planned. She thought for a moment and said, "Tomorrow, I will personally look for your Missy and make things clear. The next time you do this, I will look for the police to solve the problem." After she finished speaking, she walked to the side and picked up her bag that had been thrown on the ground. She patted the dust off it and left suavely with one hand behind her back. "Police. Police uncle." The man with the buzz cut was shocked by this address. He had seen how ruthless that kid was when he beat people up. Now that he heard her address him as police uncle, he felt a strange chill in his heart. However, before he could finish feeling disgusted, the familiar sound of a police siren came from afar and was getting closer. "Damn it! Who called the police? Why are the police here?" The man with the buzz cut was shocked and started cursing. His men all said that they did not know. Although they were in pain all over, they still got up and quickly ran in the other direction before the police arrived. Although the man with the buzz cut was cursing, he did not suspect Gu Xingyin. From his point of view, since she had said that she would look for the police the next time, it was obvious that she would not do it this time. Moreover, they had started fighting from the moment he appeared. Mo Bei had no time to call the police. Gu Xingyin carried her bag and watched as the police car drove past her. Her lips curled into a smile. Of course, she was the one who had called the police. Although she had given them a good beating, it was not enough to vent her anger. These gangsters should reflect on themselves in the police station so that they wouldn't be looking for trouble all day long. As for what she had said, she had only said that she would look for the police uncle to solve the problem next time. She did not say that she would not call the police this time. After playing the word trap, Gu Xingyin felt that knowledge was power. Read more, fight less, and keep your IQ. She wasn't as relaxed as she appeared to be. Although it looked like only the corner of her mouth was swollen, in fact, during the fight just now, 2 people had kicked her knee. At this moment, there was a dull pain. Although it shouldn't have hurt his muscles and bones, there was definitely a bruise. Gu Xingyin saw her mother playing with her 3-year-old brother on the sofa as soon as she entered the house. Mo Chen's mother turned around and saw Gu Xingyin. The first thing she saw was the obvious signs of a fight on her face. A look of disgust flashed across her eyes. "You fought with someone again? Mo Bei, can't you let your family save you some trouble? Your younger brother is still so young. I have to take care of him every day. Where would I have the energy to take care of you?" She lowered her voice. Because she saw Gu Xingyin's gaze. Her daughter had never looked at her with such a cold and hateful gaze. Mo Bei's mother felt that Mo Bei was looking at her as if he was looking at something disgusting. Gu Xingyin really felt that this woman was disgusting. She had experienced many different worlds. In almost every world, she had experienced the selfless love of her mother. She had always felt that a mother's love was the most selfless and noble thing in the world. She had never thought that there would be such a disgusting mother in the world. Chapter 1621. She saw that Mo Jingshan's mother had shut up and was avoiding her gaze. Gu Xingyin then said, "Don't say such things to me. It's as if you've put in a lot of effort for me." This was the first time Mo Bei had talked back to her mother. Before she was in high school, she had admired and worshipped Mo Jingshan's mother. When she found out the truth in high school, even if she was deeply hurt, she would at most ignore Mo Jingshan's mother's sarcastic remarks. This was the first time she had talked back to her so openly. Mo Jingshan's mother heard this and a trace of guilt flashed across her face, but it was quickly replaced by anger. "Mo Bei, is this how you speak to your mother? Have you fed all the manners I've taught you over the years to the dogs? You're an ingrate after all. You're not on my side." In her mind, no matter how well she raised her daughter, she was still someone else's daughter, so she would not be on the same side as her. She had never felt that she was in the wrong. Now, Gu Xingyin's attitude made her even more certain of her thoughts. Gu Xingyin listened to these words indifferently. She could imagine how upset the real Mo Bei would be if he heard those words. But now that it was her, Gu Xingyin, all she felt was sorrow. She felt sorrow for Mo Bei for having such a mother. She felt even more sorrow for Mo Jingshan's mother. Gu Xingyin could not understand why Mo Jingshan's mother, who was also a woman, would have such thoughts. Mo Jingshan's 3-year-old brother, who was wearing suspenders, watched in horror as his mother and brother quarreled. He pouted and started crying. Mo Jingshan's mother quickly changed her expression. She carried her son and coaxed him gently. Beichen, be good. It's mommy's fault. Mommy was too loud and scared our Beichen. The little Mo Beichen reached out to carry Gu Xingyin as he called out for his brother. He liked his brother. This brother was very good-looking and smelled good, unlike his mother, who smelled too good. But Mo Jingshan's mother misunderstood her son. She glared at Gu Xingyin angrily. Why are you still standing here? Can't you see that your brother is crying because of you? Gu Xingyin did not move. She felt a gaze coming from upstairs, and the corners of her mouth curled up without a trace. Lihua, is this how you teach your son? A deep voice came from the staircase with a hint of anger. Hearing this voice, guilt flashed across Mo Tianga's mother's face. She hurriedly stood up and said with a smile, I was too anxious to see Bei Yi covered in injuries, so I spoke a little too harshly. Weren't you working in the study? Why did you come down so quickly? If it was any other time, Father Mo might have believed him. However, he had just seen with his own eyes how his wife treated his eldest son. The disdain in her expression and tone was not concealed at all. Even he, as the father, felt that it was too much, let alone Bei Yi, who was involved in this matter. Father Mo walked downstairs and looked at Mother Mo. I'm busy with work, so you're basically taking care of the children at home. Every time I ask you, you say that Bei and Beichen are very good. So this is what very good means. As he spoke, he looked at his eldest son, who was standing quietly at the side, and a trace of heartache flashed across his eyes. Originally, he had thought that Bei's rebellious behavior was a normal phenomenon of puberty. However, seeing his wife's attitude towards his son, he was afraid that his wife had something to do with it. Chapter 1622. He looked at his wife coldly and said gently to his eldest son, Bei Yi, go take a shower first. I'll get you the first aid kit. In Mo Bei Ye's memory, his father, Mo Zhongliang, had always treated him well. Her expression softened a little, and she nodded at Father Mo, okay, Dad. After watching his son go upstairs, Mo Zhongliang looked at his wife, who looked nervous. He had always been satisfied with his wife. Her family background was very different from his, but back then, he had taken a liking to his wife's gentleness and virtue, so he had disregarded his family's objections and married her. All these years, he had always been proud that he had married a virtuous wife and was grateful for her contributions to the family. He had been very busy with work, so as a full-time housewife, she had been responsible for a lot of the upbringing of his 2 children. He had always felt that his wife had done a good job, until today. Seeing how his wife and son interacted with each other, Mo Zhongliang felt that he might have been wrong. You don't like Bei Yi? This was the first thing he said. He couldn't be blamed for thinking too much. The disgust on his wife's face was too obvious. He couldn't ignore it even if he wanted to. Su Lihua's expression was a little unnatural. Of course, she didn't like Mo Bei Yi. In fact, more than 10 years ago, when her eldest son had just died, she had thought in the middle of the night that it would be great if her daughter had died instead. However, she knew that her husband didn't like her being like this, so in front of Mo Zhongliang, she had always pretended to be nice to Mo Bei Yi. Su Lihua said, Bei Yi has been getting more and more rebellious ever since he started high school. You heard it too. He's been talking back to me. I have to take care of Beichen, so I don't have the energy to discipline him. She thought she had made it clear, but when she raised her head, she met her husband's disappointed gaze. Mo Zhongliang's heart sank when he heard his wife's self-righteous words. Bei Yi was her son, not some random stranger. She actually said that she didn't care because the child was disobedient. Was this something a biological mother would say? Mo Zhongliang thought about what he had heard earlier. Bei Yi had sneered and refuted his wife's words, and he found himself speechless. Not only was he dissatisfied with his wife, but he also felt guilty towards himself. If only he had put more effort into his family. Perhaps his wife and son would not have become like this. He said, "Since you don't want to take care of Bei Yi, I'll take care of him." Su Lihua was shocked. What did her husband mean? She had never wanted her husband to get too close to Mo Bei. She was afraid that her husband would hand over the Mo family business to his eldest son. In Su Lihua's heart, she didn't care about the past, but after her youngest son was born, she felt that everything in the Mo family should belong to Beichen in the future. In any case, Mo Bei was a daughter. She was going to get married anyway. No matter how much he gave her, it would just be throwing her out. Hearing Mo Zhongliang's words, she quickly said, "Aren't you busy with the company? Where would he have the time to take care of Bei Yi?" Mo Zhongliang said coldly, "No matter how busy the company is, can it be more important than my son?" When Su Lihua heard this, she quickly said, "If you have time, you can take care of Beichen more. Beichen is still so young, and he loves spending time with his father. Bei Yi is already so old, there's no need for him to." Chapter 1623. Su Lihua did not manage to finish her sentence. Her husband's gaze was like a sharp sword that exposed all the stupidity and unbearability that she hid behind her virtuous appearance. "Su Lihua, you really disappoint me. Bei Yi, he's your son too." Mo Zhongliang didn't expect that he would discover such a big crisis in his family just because he accidentally eavesdropped on the conversation. He never knew that his wife's heart was so biased to such an extent. She had placed all her attention on her 3-year-old son. She was so obvious even in front of him. How could Bei Yi, the person involved, not see it? Mo Zhongliang felt a huge sense of guilt. He had been too careless. He had thought that nothing would go wrong if he left the child in the care of his biological mother. He never knew that his eldest son had suffered such a huge grievance. He looked at his wife's confused expression and felt that she had done nothing wrong. He suddenly felt very annoyed. Mo Zhongliang stood up from the sofa. "I'll get Bei Yi the first aid kit." Gu Xingyin had just finished showering and changed her clothes when she heard a knock on the door. She opened the door and saw her father, Mo Zhongliang. Mo Zhongliang walked in with the first aid kit in his hands. "Bei Yi, I'm sorry." Mo Zhongliang did not think that apologizing to his son was embarrassing. In fact, he felt that he had failed as a father when he thought about how his son had suffered in this family. Gu Xingyin comforted him with a smile. "You're not wrong, father." Mo Zhongliang took out the ointment from the first aid kit and applied it on Gu Xingyin personally. He only applied a small patch on the side of her mouth, so it did not take long. Gu Xingyin saw that he was going to take the first aid kit away and quickly said, "Father, please leave this in my room. I'll apply it when I sleep at night." Mo Zhongliang placed the first aid kit on her bedside table. He felt that he had not looked at his eldest son so seriously for a long time. The young master was already 17 years old, but he was scarily thin. He was also shorter than the average teenager. Actually, this was only because of Gu Xingyin's gender. But in Mo Zhongliang's eyes, he instantly imagined his son being treated coldly by his mother when he wasn't at home. He only felt his heart ache. "Has your mother always been like this to you?" he asked. Gu Xingyin was silent for a moment before she shook her head. "Before my brother was born, my mother was very strict with me. She wanted me to be the best at everything, or else she would punish me. When Gu Xingyin mentioned this, her expression did not change. It was as if she was talking about something unrelated to her. After she had a younger brother, she stopped caring about me. She didn't care if my studies worsened or if I got into fights or dyed my hair. Gu Xingyin's voice was very calm. She raised her head and looked at Mo Zhongliang. As you can see, Dad, she doesn't love me at all. Mo Zhongliang looked at his son and felt bitter in his heart. He wanted to tell his son that his mother actually loved him, but when he thought of his wife's appearance, he really couldn't say it. He gently hugged his son. Your mother just couldn't take care of you and your brother at the same time. He felt guilty when he said this, but he could only comfort his son like this. Gu Xingyin couldn't help but laugh. She got up from her father's arms and said with a smile, I'm a man, Dad. You don't have to comfort me like this. Her gaze was very calm. 3 years ago, no matter how much dissatisfaction I had, it would have been worn away by time. Now, I don't hate her at all. Chapter 1624. Her words did not make Mo Zhongliang feel at ease at all. Because he felt a little flustered when he saw his son's expression. As expected, Gu Xingyin looked at him and smiled. I used to have expectations for my mother, but now I don't have any. It's okay that she doesn't love me. I don't love her either. Although she was smiling, when she said this, tears fell from her eyes uncontrollably. She did not seem to realize that she was still talking to Mo Zhongliang. Don't blame me, Dad. I really can't take it anymore. Mo Zhongliang's eyes reddened. How could he blame her? Looking at his eldest son, the only thing he could think of at this moment was how deeply his wife had hurt this child. There was no child who did not want to be loved by their parents. His eldest son had completely lost all expectations for his mother. His lips trembled. It's okay, Bei. Don't cry. Dad loves you. Dad treats you well. Gu Xingyin reached out and wiped away her tears. She smiled embarrassedly. I know that I've been a jerk for the past 2 years. I've made you worry. Don't worry, I won't do it again. From tomorrow onwards, I'll study well and won't let you down. The more obedient his son was, the more bitter Mo Zhongliang felt. At the same time, his dissatisfaction with his wife grew. Gu Xingyin thought of something and suddenly said hesitantly, Dad, if one day you find out that I've been hiding something very important from you and deceiving you for a long time, will you forgive me? She knew that the sooner she told Mo Zhongliang that Mo Bei was a girl, the better. The longer this matter was delayed, the harder it would be to explain in the future. Mo Zhongliang looked at her kindly. Silly child. In Dad's heart, there's nothing that can't be forgiven for my own child. Gu Xingyin laughed. She had to find a good time to talk to her father about this matter. Why should an innocent girl like her pay for the sins that Su Lihua had committed? The next day, Gu Xingyin went to look for Yu Qingyue after the morning self-study session. Yu Qingyue was shocked to see him. The girl felt a little guilty, especially when she saw the bruise on the corner of Gu Xingyin's mouth. It was obvious that she had been beaten up. Gu Xingyin pulled her to an empty classroom and slammed the door shut. Yu Qingyue was a little nervous. She swallowed her saliva and looked at Gu Xingyin with wide eyes. Mo Bei, what are you trying to do? Let me tell you, it's wrong of me to get someone to beat you up, but you bullied me first. She continued to glare at Gu Xingyin. You obviously don't like me, but you didn't say it clearly. You made me look forward to it for so long. You are a bastard. Gu Xingyin kept looking at her with a faint smile, which made Yu Qingyue's hair stand on end. The girl thought to herself, is Mo Bei going to beat me up in this empty classroom and return the favor? Gu Xingyin suddenly moved closer to Yu Qingyue. The distance between the two of them narrowed in an instant. Yu Qingyue could even smell the faint fragrance of plants on Gu Xingyin's body. She blushed instantly. You You. What are you trying to do? Gu Xingyin smiled wickedly and whispered in her ear, do you want to know why I rejected you? Chapter 1625. Yu Qingyue felt that her brain wasn't working properly. At such a close distance, she could see Gu Xingyin's entire face clearly. Facing such a perfect, 360-degree face at such a close distance, the impact on his heart was indescribable. She gulped and said, isn't it because you don't like me? Of course not. Gu Xingyin shook her head gently and held her hand. Yu Qingyue's heart beat even faster. What was he trying to do? Soon, she knew what he was trying to do. Because Gu Xingyin held her hand and gently placed it on her chest. Yu Qingyue's face turned even redder because of Gu Xingyin's action. But in the next moment, the redness disappeared completely. Yu Qingyue's face turned pale. She looked at Gu Xingyin and said, you. Gu Xingyin let go of her hand and took a step back. The evil expression on her face disappeared completely. That's it. Yu Qingyue felt that her worldview had been turned upside down. Just yesterday, she had fallen out of love. But today, she discovered something even more shocking than falling out of love. The person she liked was actually a woman like herself. She stared at Gu Xingyin with wide eyes and said, then why did you? She looked at Gu Xingyin from head to toe. To be honest, if she hadn't touched that incredible softness, she would never have thought that Mo Bei was actually a woman. Gu Xingyin sighed and said with a worried expression, the story is too complicated. I can't tell you. She looked at Yu Qingyue with a sincere expression and said, but I swear, I really didn't mean to play with you. I really didn't expect your reaction to be so big. Knowing that Mo Bei was a woman, Yu Qingyue had a strange feeling in her heart. But since she had already hired people to teach Mo Bei a lesson, she naturally wouldn't be so calculative about this matter. Yu Qingyue waved her hand, clearly dejected. Forget it, there's nothing more to say. She leaned against a desk, feeling as if she had nothing left to live for. Gu Xingyin looked at her and was a little worried. She asked tentatively, are you okay? Yu Qingyue waved her hand. It's okay. I'm just mourning the loss of my youth. Gu Xingyin. All right. She decided to leave this place and not disturb Yu Qingyue's mourning. In the end, after the morning classes ended, Yu Qingyue took the initiative to look for Gu Xingyin again during lunch. Gu Xingyin looked at her. At this moment, her expression was relaxed and her eyes were cheerful. She did not look as sad as she did in the morning. Yu Qingyue sat opposite Gu Xingyin. Seeing her looking at her, she said with a smile, I've thought about it all morning and finally figured it out. Gu Xingyin looked confused. What did you figure out? Yu Qingyue smiled and said, I want to be friends with you. Gu Xingyin, huh? Yu Qingyue looked at Gu Xingyin's confused expression and sighed. She said, it's obvious how blind I was in the past. You're clearly an adorable person. How are you cold and evil? Gu Xingyin, why was it that she could understand every single word this girl said, but she couldn't understand them when they were put together? Yu Qingyue was immersed in her own imagination. Think about it. The school hunk is my good friend. How many people can receive such treatment? Gu Xingyin, wake up, girl. Hey. Did I promise you anything? Chapter 1626. However, it was clear that Yu Qingyue didn't need Gu Xingyin's approval at all. She had already included Gu Xingyin in her friend list. When Gu Xingyin returned to the classroom, her desk mate, Chen Jun, looked at her enviously as if he was looking at a winner in life. Gu Xingyin was confused. What's wrong? Chen Jun said, you're still pretending. Everyone in our class knows that you and the campus belle, Yu Qingyue, had lunch together at noon. You were talking and laughing. Everyone is saying that you two are together. He leaned closer and asked in a low voice, "Is this true?" Gu Xingyin calmly pushed his head away with her book. "You guys are overthinking it. It's fake." Chen Jun's face was full of disbelief. He said disdainfully, "How can it be fake? If there's nothing between you two, why are you so close?" Gu Xingyin said, "I'm a good friend. We're just friends." Chen Jun's expression became even more disdainful. "Yes, that's right. Before marriage, we're all friends." Gu Xingyin, she gave up on explaining. At the same time, in the Yu family. If Gu Xingyin was here, she would be able to recognize the man who was standing there respectfully. It was the man with the buzz cut who led the group to cause trouble for her. However, he wasn't wearing a funny hip-hop t-shirt now, and his face didn't have that sloppy expression. Sitting opposite him was a young man. If one had to use something to describe this man, it would be jade. Exquisite and noble like jade. It was as if it had been carefully nurtured by heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Cold like jade. This man didn't have any cold expression on his face. In fact, he looked very peaceful. However, he just sat there like this. It always made people feel that there was an insurmountable distance between them. The 12 of you went to cause trouble for someone, and you came back beaten black and blue. The man's voice was very pleasant. His tone was neither fast nor slow. However, the buzz cut's heart was raised high. "It's our fault." This man was Yu Qingyue's brother, Yu Qingyun. A few days ago, when he heard his sister's complaint, he casually asked the buzz cut beside him to bring a few people to teach that kid a lesson. He forgot about this matter immediately. Today, he suddenly remembered to ask about it. He didn't expect to receive such a surprise. Yu Qingyun shook his head. "It's not your fault. One could fight against more than 10 trained people and still have the upper hand. This classmate of his sister didn't seem to be simple." The man with the buzz cut asked cautiously, "Then, do you need me to bring more people with me?" Yu Qingyun looked at him with a faint smile. "Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough?" The buzz cut lowered his head in shame. Yu Qingyun said, "It's just a small dispute between young people. Since you've already brought people over, this matter can be considered closed. Don't cause any more trouble." The man with the buzz cut lowered his head. "Yes." Yu Qingyun didn't take this matter to heart. It wasn't until dinner that he casually asked, "Qingyue, how's school?" Yu Qingyue didn't understand. "It's pretty good." Yu Qingyun asked, "Your ex-boyfriend knows that you sent people to beat him. Didn't he say anything?" Their mother had passed away when they were young, and their father had always been elusive, so they had been relying on each other since they were young. When Yu Qingyue heard the words, ex-boyfriend, she looked conflicted. She said, "Don't say ex-boyfriend. He's not my ex-boyfriend. There was a misunderstanding between us." Chapter 1627. Yu Qingyun was a little curious. He still remembered how hurt and angry his sister looked when she came home 2 days ago. Yu Qingyun didn't even doubt that her younger sister hated that boy called Imo Bei to the bone. She was fine so quickly. Thinking about what his sister said, the two of them had become good friends. From a heartless man to a good friend, and Qingyue didn't seem to hate him at all when she talked about him. This was the first time Yu Qingyun was curious about this mysterious boy. After all, he knew his sister well. Qingyue wasn't the kind of girl who didn't have a high IQ. She wouldn't be so easily won over with just a few words. Because of this, Yu Qingyun was curious. What did that boy do to make his sister's attitude change so drastically? Yu Qingyue didn't know what her brother was thinking. If she knew that Gu Xingyin was being targeted by her brother, she would definitely light a candle for her. No matter what, being targeted by her brother wasn't a good thing. Gu Xingyin still didn't know that she had attracted the interest of a certain big shot. Ever since she told her father about it, she and Mother Mo didn't even bother to give face at home. Every day when she came home from school, she pretended that she didn't see anyone at home and walked away without looking at them. Originally, she had a good relationship with her brother, Mo Baichen, but Mother Mo obviously didn't want her son to be too close to her. She didn't know what she had taught her son in private, but once when Gu Xingyin reached out to hug him, Mo Baichen visibly shrank back. Gu Xingyin was stunned. Soon after, she calmly withdrew her hand and turned to go upstairs without hesitation. Because of this, Mo Zhongliang and Mother Mo had an intense argument. Speaking of which, Mo Bei's parents had a good relationship. Mother Mo was the typical kind of woman who only cared about her husband and children at home and never got involved in her husband's business outside. The first argument between the two of them was because of Mo Bei. Ever since their first quarrel, the quarrel between the two of them had become a common occurrence. And this time, Mother Mo's actions completely ignited Father Mo's anger. Su Lihua. Do you know what you're doing? Bei is your son. He was Beichen's brother. Look at yourself. What have you taught Beichen? Who told him to distance himself from his own brother? Mo Zhongliang was furious. He really couldn't understand his wife. Why did she do this? Su Lihua's childhood education taught her to be submissive when facing her husband. She didn't argue and just stood there calmly, allowing her husband to vent his anger. Little did he know that such an attitude was even more infuriating than a direct rebuttal. Right now, I'm very worried about what Beichen will become in your hands. I'll call Mother to come over and bring Beichen over. You should calm down. Mo Zhongliang dropped these words and planned to leave. Only now did Su Lihua truly feel flustered. Her son was hers. What did Mo Zhongliang mean by this? Were they going to forcibly separate her from Beichen? You can't do that. Su Lihua screamed. Mo Zhongliang looked at his gentle and virtuous wife. There was no tenderness in his eyes. He said coldly, "No, I can." Chapter 1628. Su Lihua's tears rolled down her cheeks. Beichen is still so young. How could you bear to let him leave his mother? Is he really your son? How could you be so heartless? Mo Zhongliang was already furious. When he heard Su Lihua's words, he exploded. I wanted to ask you the same question, Su Lihua. Isn't Beichen your son? How could you bear to treat him like this? Su Lihua opened her mouth, but she didn't care. Mo Beichen wasn't her son. She only had one son, Beichen. Seeing that she was silent, the light in Mo Zhongliang's eyes dimmed. He was completely disappointed in his wife. Mo Zhongliang's parents had moved out when Mo Zhongliang and his wife got married. The old couple had bought a villa in a city in the south. They spent most of the year traveling and enjoying life. Hearing her son's request, old Madame Mo was surprised. However, she still rushed over with old Master Mo the next day. What's going on? Old Madame Mo's silver hair was neatly combed. She was wearing a half-modified cheongsam with a shawl around her shoulders. The emerald jade ring on her finger was shining with a warm light. She was a very elegant old lady. She knew her son. If it wasn't something serious, he wouldn't have asked them to come back in such a hurry. Mo Zhongliang asked the nanny to bring Mo Beichen out to play. Then, in front of his wife, Su Lihua, he told the two elders everything that had happened. After hearing his son's words, old Master Mo was so angry that he couldn't speak for a long time. Old Madame Mo's face also turned cold. Su Lihua. She called her daughter-in-law's name coldly. Before Su Lihua married Mo Zhongliang, she was very afraid of this mother-in-law. Now that she was a mother of two, she couldn't help but shudder when she heard this. Seeing this, old Madame Mo's heart flashed with disappointment. Back then, she was very dissatisfied with this daughter-in-law. It wasn't because her status was too low, but because her knowledge was too shallow. Old Madame Mo always felt that she couldn't be the young madam of the Mo family. But back then, Mo Zhongliang had insisted on being with her. As a mother, she could not argue with him. She thought that with her by the side, Su Lihua would slowly develop the bearing of a lady of a wealthy family. But looking at it today, it was obvious that Su Lihua hadn't made any progress after all these years. Thinking about what her son had said, no matter how well-mannered old Madame Mo was, she could not help but feel angry. What the hell is going on in your head? He alienated his own children and taught his younger son to be estranged from his own elder brother. What are you trying to do? Did my Mo clan offend you? Su Lihua's face turned pale when she heard the responsibility. She subconsciously looked at her husband, but Mo Zhongliang didn't look at her. Su Lihua mustered up her courage and said, "What can I do? Mo Bei isn't close to me, so I can only be closer to Beichen. He doesn't like me so much. How am I supposed to know if he'll badmouth me when he's with Beichen?" As soon as she said this, the expressions of the three people present changed. Elder Mo paused for a long time before pointing at Mo Zhongliang. This is the stupid woman you insisted on marrying back then. Chapter 1629. Mo Zhongliang did not expect that Su Lihua would say something so stupid instead of arguing with him. What did she mean by not being close to him and speaking ill of him? What did she think of her son as? She even guarded against him. Old Madame Mo was so angry that her chest heaved up and down. My heart aches for my Bei. How could he be treated like that? Old Master Mo was also infuriated. Mo Bei was conceived not long after Mo Zhongliang and Su Lihua got married. At that time, Old Master Mo and his wife became grandparents for the first time. They had high hopes for their grandson. They even stayed here for a few months just to see their grandson every day. They were not annoying elders. They could tell that their daughter-in-law treasured their grandson, so they did not fight to carry him. They only took a few glances at him every day. It was because of this that Su Lihua hid Mo Bei's gender. When Mo Beichen was born, Old Master Mo and Old Madame Mo were still very happy. They even came back personally to bring gifts for their grandson. However, they did not have the same expectations as before. To them, Mo Bei was different. Of course, their hearts ached even more. Seeing that Su Lihua only lowered her head and did not speak, Old Madame Mo was unhappy. Go back to your room and stay there. My head hurts just looking at you. Su Lihua raised her head and looked at Old Madame Mo. Mom, you're not really going to take Beichen away, are you? Old Madame Mo's expression turned cold. Look at you. I'm afraid that you'll ruin my grandson. Su Lihua said anxiously, No, Beichen is different from Bei. I'll teach him well. She realized that she had said something wrong and quickly shut her mouth. But it was too late. The three people present had heard her words clearly. Mo Zhongliang was furious. Su Lihua, what do you mean? What do you mean by Bei is different from Beichen? What are you hiding from me? Huh? Su Lihua's face was pale as she kept her mouth shut. At this moment, a clear voice came from the door. I know why. I'm different from Beichen. The three of them then realized that Gu Xingyin was standing at the door with her bag on her back. They could not tell if she was happy or angry. They did not know how long she had been listening. Bei, Old Madame Mo called out to her first. Gu Xingyin put down her schoolbag and walked to Old Madame Mo and Old Master Mo, Grandma, Grandpa. If it were any other time, Old Madame Mo would have held on to Gu Xingyin's hand and questioned her for a long time. But now, it was clear that she had more pressing matters to attend to. Gu Xingyin glanced at Su Lihua. Su Lihua was looking at her in horror, as if she was afraid that Gu Xingyin would spill the beans. Seeing Su Lihua's expression, the other three became even more suspicious. Gu Xingyin turned her face away and said to Old Master Mo and Old Madam Mo, "Can you ask Mother to leave for a while and look after her? I can't continue." Su Lihua refused to leave. She said, "Mo Bei, what do you want? Let me tell you, don't be impulsive. Don't say anything you shouldn't say. Shut up." Old Madam Mo was both shocked and furious. Seeing how her grandson and daughter-in-law were acting, she felt that there might be a big secret behind this. Mo Zhongliang's expression wasn't good either. Seeing his wife's panicked expression, he didn't say a word and directly pulled her out. Then, with a bang, he closed the door. Chapter 1630. Only the three of them were left in the large living room. Gu Xingyin saw that everyone was looking at her. Suddenly, she knelt down with a thud. "Your grandson is unfilial." Old Master Mo and Old Madam Mo were shocked by her actions. "Get up." Mo Zhongliang immediately took action and tried to pull him up. Gu Xingyin refused to get up. "Listen to what I'm about to tell you before you decide." Let me get up." After she finished speaking, she lowered her head and slowly told them about Mo Bei's, no, Mo Baiyan's, experiences over the years. In fact, Gu Xingyin hadn't thought of a good time to tell her family. Who knew that Su Lihua's actions would alarm Old Master Mo and Old Madam Mo, who were far away in another city? When Gu Xingyin heard their conversation from the doorway, she knew that the right time had come. This was the time when the three of them hated Su Lihua the most. Mo Baiyan's grandparents were also very distressed over their grandson's misfortune. If she told them everything about Mo Baiyan's experiences over the years, the outcome would be better than expected. Gu Xingyin quietly told them all about her experiences and feelings over the years. She didn't exaggerate. With what Su Lihua had done and said, there was no need to add fuel to the fire. If she hadn't experienced it herself, Gu Xingyin would never have imagined that a biological mother could be so cold-blooded to her own child. The living room was silent for a long time. After Gu Xingyin finished speaking, she knelt there quietly with her head lowered. She didn't make a sound and waited for them to digest the contents of her words. Suddenly, her body was pulled into a warm embrace. Hot liquid dripped from the top of her head and slid down her neck. For the first time, Old Madam Mo, who had been strong and elegant all her life, sobbed as she hugged her granddaughter. "My Bei, no, my Yen, It's all my fault. After so many years, I didn't even notice this." Gu Xingyin thought that she would not feel anything. After all, she was just a bystander, calmly narrating Mo Baiyan's experience. However, when she raised her head, she realized that her face was already covered in tears. Perhaps the real Mo Baiyan's deepest wish was to be able to tell others that she was Mo Bei Yen, the daughter of the Mo family, and not the first young Master Mo Bei who had died 17 years ago. Old Master Mo's eyes were red, and Mo Zhongliang was already in tears. He gritted his teeth and said, Su Lihua. I want to divorce her." When he said this, he was almost gnashing his teeth. Old Master Mo and Old Madam Mo did not refute him. Initially, they thought that their daughter-in-law, Su Lihua, was just too narrow-minded and had a weak and old-fashioned personality. However, when they saw her do such a thing to her own flesh and blood, how could she be old-fashioned and weak? She was clearly selfish and vicious to the extreme. She was extremely stupid. Such a woman had almost ruined her own daughter's life. Mo Zhongliang looked at his slender and weak daughter, who was nestled in her mother's arms. After finding out that she was a girl, she was full of flaws. It was because this matter was too unimaginable that no one thought of this aspect. Chapter 1631. Mo Zhongliang felt so guilty that he didn't dare to look at his daughter. He couldn't even imagine how his daughter had survived all these years. Whether it was during her childhood when she listened to her mother's words and tried her best to hide the fact that she was different from others, or when she realized that she was just a substitute for a dead person. He had always thought that her biological mother had taken good care of her. He even wondered how his daughter felt every time she heard someone call him Mo Bei. Before today, for a whole 17 years, only one person in this world knew that she was called Mo Bei Yen. But the only person who knew her true identity, who was supposed to be the closest person to her, had never called her Mo Bei Yen. Her mother had personally said that she lived for her brother. If that was the case, how much damage would it cause to a child? Su Lihua didn't deserve to be a mother. He wasn't a qualified father either. Yen, For the first time, his voice trembled as he called out his daughter's name. Gu Xingyin's heart trembled. She raised her head and called Mo Zhongliang, Dad. Looking at his daughter's usual smile, Mo Zhongliang's heart was filled with bitterness. He held back the tears that were about to fall from his eyes as he softly reprimanded Gu Xingyin. Why didn't you tell Dad about such an important matter? Gu Xingyin was silent for a moment before she replied in a low voice, I was scared. Mo Bei Yen was really scared. She was scared that her family would hate her like her mother and hate her for lying to them. When I was young, Mom told me that if I wasn't a son, Dad would find another woman outside and we would be chased out. When I grew up and found out about this, I didn't dare to say anything. Gu Xingyin was almost trembling as she said the rest of her words. I was scared that you wouldn't like my daughter either. I was scared that you would like Mo Bei and not Mo Bei Yen. Before she could finish speaking, Mo Zhongliang could no longer hold back and pulled her into his arms. You child, why are you so silly? Mo Zhongliang hugged his daughter's shoulders tightly. She was clearly so thin and small. With such a heavy burden on her body, it must be very painful, right? Old Madame Mo looked at the father and daughter hugging each other, and the tears that she had just held back flowed out again. She wiped her tears with a handkerchief and said coldly, call that woman Su Lihua in. I want to ask her where she got the guts to do such a thing. What makes you think that the Mo family won't like our granddaughter? At this moment, old Madame Mo really hated Su Lihua. She even had the thought of tearing her apart. Mo Zhongliang loosened Gu Xingyin in his arms. Go and sit beside your grandmother. He walked out of the living room and opened the door. Sure enough, he saw Su Lihua standing outside anxiously. When Su Lihua saw him, she quickly said, Zhongliang, Pa. Mo Zhongliang couldn't hold back. He raised his hand and slapped her hard on the face. This slap was too forceful, and Su Lihua was sent crashing into the wall by the inertia. She raised her head and looked at Mo Zhongliang in disbelief. The two of them had known each other for 20 years until they got married. This was the first time Mo Zhongliang had hit her. In other words, this was the first time Mo Zhongliang had hit a woman in his life. Chapter 1632. Mo Zhongliang did not speak to her. He took her hand and dragged her into the living room. Su Lihua stood firm with great difficulty and saw that everyone in the living room was looking at her with unkind expressions. She was a little flustered. Looking at Gu Xingyin sitting in old Madame Mo's arms, she was unsure if she had told them the truth. However, Mo Zhongliang could not hold it in any longer. He almost roared out, Su Lihua, let me ask you, all these years, when have I ever treated you badly? Have I ever looked at another woman more than once? What made you think that I would despise you just because you gave birth to a daughter? Has anyone in the Mo family ever said that they didn't like daughters? Su Lihua was stunned. When Mo Zhongliang said this, it was obvious that Mo Bei Yen had revealed her biggest secret. Seeing that she was silent, Mo Zhongliang pointed at Gu Xingyin and said, this person is the daughter you gave birth to after 10 months of pregnancy. She is your own flesh and blood. She is not a tool for you to consolidate your position, and she is not a substitute for anyone. In the end, he looked at his wife, who seemed to have never known him, in disappointment and said, Su Lihua, don't you feel guilty for doing such a thing? Su Lihua's body trembled. She raised her head and looked at her husband who was looking at her with disappointment, her in-laws who were looking at her coldly, and her daughter who was looking at her with indifference. She felt as if something had left her. She said blankly, the son is supposed to inherit the family business. At that time, I hurt my body giving birth to the two of them. The doctor said that it would be difficult for me to get pregnant again. A daughter is supposed to be married off. No matter how much I raise her, she will not mature. Hearing her words, old Madame Mo's eyes flashed with disgust. Su Lihua, look at the situation now. What kind of logic is this? Su Lihua looked at her mother-in-law, whom she had always been afraid of, and replied subconsciously, my family has always told me this since I was young. My sister and I, our family, our entire place, daughters are like spilled water. They are not favored and will not get anything in the family in the future. They are all losers. She spoke slowly, as if the more detailed she was, the more she could prove that her point of view was correct. Old Madame Mo looked at Su Lihua as if she was looking at something dirty. She said with disgust, Su Lihua, when you think about these things, have you ever thought that you are a woman? Su Lihua wanted to say, I know, but this is how the world works. In the future, the son will be the pillar of the family, and the daughter will be married off to someone else. What's the point of taking care of someone else? But when she looked at her parents-in-law and her husband's eyes, she didn't dare to say those words out loud. Mo Zhongliang looked at his wife. He never knew that her bones were branded with such backward and ignorant thoughts today. She had almost ruined her daughter's life because of this. He said slowly, then I'll tell you today, Su Lihua. As my daughter, I will leave half of the Mo family's business to Bei Yin. A daughter is not a money-losing commodity, nor is she water that can be poured out. She is a treasure that her father has been looking forward to for a long time. Since you don't want to cherish her, then I'll dote on my daughter. Su Lihua, let's divorce. Chapter 1633. When Su Lihua heard this, she staggered. She never thought that her husband would actually say such things to her because of this matter. Divorce? What would a woman of her age do after a divorce? Her family had always been proud of having a daughter who had married into a wealthy family. If she were divorced, they would definitely not accept her. She suddenly raised her head and looked at Mo Zhongliang. You want to divorce me because of this? I married into the Mo family for so many years and helped you take care of the family. I even gave birth to Beichen. You want to divorce me because of this matter? Mo Zhongliang's heart turned cold when he heard her still mention the fact that she had given birth to a son. After more than 20 years, he finally realized how big a gap there was between his thoughts and his wife's. He could no longer communicate with her. Mo Zhongliang turned his head away and did not want to look at her. I will find a good lawyer and settle the division of assets. Don't worry, it will be enough for you to live a good life for the rest of your life. Su Lihua supported herself on the sofa with difficulty. She looked at her husband's cold face, then at her parents-in-law, who also had cold expressions, and her daughter, who was looking at her like she was a stranger. At this time, no one was willing to speak up for her. Su Lihua did not feel that she had committed any unforgivable mistake. She had asked Mo Bei to dress up as a man so that they could live a better life. Was this necessary? She looked at Mo Bei with a hopeful gaze. Bei, you don't want to leave Mom, right? Mom was so good to you when you were young. Can you bear to see Mom being kicked out of the house? Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes. You are indeed good to Mo Bei, but I am Gu Xingyin. This woman still refused to give up. Gu Xingyin thought that she was not stupid. She was just selfish to the extreme. Looking at her daughter's cold expression, Su Lihua had a feeling that this was indeed the case. Look, this was her daughter. When her biological mother was in trouble, she didn't even say a word to plead for leniency. With such a daughter, what's the use of treating her so well with all your heart? If Gu Xingyin knew what she was thinking, he would probably laugh at her. It had always been a matter of changing hearts. You treat me as nothing and don't have any feelings for me. Why do you expect me to hug your leg and kneel down and lick your boots? When Su Lihua saw that Gu Xingyin had no chance, she immediately thought of her youngest son. Where's Beichen? If we get divorced, what will happen to Beichen? She asked. Old Madame Mo said in a deep voice, our Mo family's grandson naturally doesn't need you to worry about him. In other words, Mo Beichen was staying in the Mo family. Su Lihua retorted, Beichen is still so young. Our relationship is so good. How can he leave his mother? How can you be so heartless as to separate us? Old Madame Mo looked at her with a cold smile. Her sharp gaze seemed to be able to see through her heart. Don't worry, Beichen will be taught well by us. It's a stupid woman like you that makes people worry. If Beichen follows you, he'll be spoiled for the rest of his life. Su Lihua was naturally unwilling, but Madame Mo wasn't easy to deal with. So what if she was unwilling? After doing such a thing, she still wanted to stay in the Mo family to harm the child. It was simply a fool's dream. Chapter 1634. In the end, Su Lihua still divorced Mo Zhongliang. Old Madame Mo's words were simple. If you agree to the divorce now, I will let Zhongliang and you go through the normal legal procedures to divide the assets. With the Mo family's wealth, you will get a lot of things. But if you don't agree, I will immediately contact the lawyer to prepare the documents. We will meet in court. Old Madame Mo's gaze was cold as ice. Su Lihua, even if you are ignorant of the law, you should know the consequences if the things you have done are exposed. I can easily make you leave the marriage with nothing. When the time comes, you won't get anything. Old Madame Mo's words were mostly meant as a threat. If it was someone who was scheming, they might not be frightened by her. However, it was enough to scare Su Lihua. As old Madame Mo expected, Su Lihua was silent for a while with a pale face. In the end, she agreed to the divorce. When Gu Xingyin lifted her head, she happened to see the deep disappointment and pain in her father's eyes. After all, they had been husband and wife for more than 20 years. No matter what, they still had feelings for each other. But the things Su Lihua had done were too ridiculous. Mo Zhongliang could not forgive her. Mo Beichen was still young. His family kept these things from him and did not let him know at all. It was only when he could not find his mother that he started to bawl. But children were forgetful. Old Madame Mo was good at raising children. Within a week, Mo Beichen had returned to how he was before. It was as if he could not remember that his mother was not by his side. As for Gu Xingyin's side, the reason for being raised as a boy by her biological mother was too ridiculous. It would be embarrassing if word got out. The few of them discussed for a while and decided to wait until Gu Xingyin was 18 years old. They would use the reason that a master had read her fortune when she was young. He said that there would be a calamity in her life and she had to be raised as a boy before the age of 18 to avoid it. For a wealthy family like theirs, they trusted the fortune tellers very much. It was not strange that they would use such a reason. However, Bei Yan will have to suffer for a while. Old Madame Mo held her granddaughter's hand and said apologetically. Gu Xingyin smiled. Anyway, I've been used to dressing as a man for so many years. This is nothing to me. What she said was the truth, but in the ears of the elders, it made them feel even more sorry for her. The students of Chuanan First High School realized that their school hunk Mo Bei's personality seemed to have changed again. Her dyed brown hair was dyed back, and her non-mainstream clothes were gone. Even the strange earrings on her hands and ears were removed. In the next month's monthly exam, Mo Bei, whose results had plummeted, returned to the first row. It was as if the top student and school hunk of the past had returned. However, there were still some differences. In the past, Mo Bei had a cold and aloof personality. He almost never spoke to anyone in class and had no friends. But now, Mo Bei always had a smile on his face. When he met teachers and classmates in school, he would greet them with a smile. With Mo Bei's face, it was simply too easy for him to gain the favor of others. In just a month's time, Gu Xingyin became the most popular student in class. She even successfully entered the inner circle of the female students and became a female friend. Chapter 1635. Although the teacher felt that this student had changed a little, he attributed it to the rebelliousness of adolescence. Obviously, Mo Bei's rebellious period had passed. As long as it was developing in a good direction, they were happy to see it. "You little brat, you're so cool." Chen Jun looked at Gu Xingyin and sighed. Gu Xingyin had heard such comments many times in the past few days. At first, she was very confused and didn't understand what Chen Jun was talking about, so she asked foolishly. Then, Chen Jun's answer shocked her. "Look, people like us are usually very careful when talking to girls. When they talk to us, they are also very formal. But when it comes to you," Chen Jun's eyes were full of yearning. "All the girls in the class are your best friends, and you even have a campus belle as your girlfriend. You little brat, you're simply a winner in life." Gu Xingyin, she thought about it. Probably to these young boys who were still in their second year of middle school, someone like her could really be considered a winner in life. In fact, Gu Xingyin didn't understand either. She clearly had the same face, so why was she so popular recently? Chen Jun was still lamenting that he could only blame his parents for not giving him a good look. At noon, Yu Qingyue came to look for Gu Xingyin again. Under the clear gaze of the students in the class, Gu Xingyin helplessly got up and walked out of the classroom. Ever since she found out that Gu Xingyin was a girl and defined their relationship as good friends, Yu Qingyue liked to play with this new friend of hers. She stood outside the classroom for a while and watched Gu Xingyin get along with the girls in the class quite happily. "Now," she joked, "I couldn't tell that you're quite popular in class." Gu Xingyin casually replied, "I don't know why either. I wasn't this popular in the past." Hearing this, Yu Qingyue took a step back and carefully looked at Gu Xingyin. She smiled and said, "I know why." Gu Xingyin, ? Yu Qingyue said matter-of-factly, "Because you've become prettier." Gu Xingyin, she knew that she couldn't expect to hear any serious answer from Yu Qingyue. In front of others, Yu Qingyue was a sweet and delicate little princess. But when you really came into contact with her, you would find that this girl was completely a person with a godly logic. Her way of thinking seemed to always be different from ordinary people. For example, Gu Xingyin had a hard time keeping up with her. Seeing the look of disbelief on Gu Xingyin's face, Yu Qingyue pouted and said, "I'm telling the truth. You really do look a lot better than before." It was also much tastier. Mo Baiyan's facial features were very beautiful, as if they were delicately drawn. If she was dressed as a girl, she would definitely be an extremely beautiful and elegant beauty. But if she was dressed as a boy, it would be that kind of androgynous delicate. In the past, whether Mo Bei pretended to be cold and aloof or developed himself in a non-mainstream direction, it did not suit this face's temperament. But now that Gu Xingyin had resolved the Mo family's matter, there was naturally no need for her to make herself look terrible. She just casually dressed herself according to her own preferences. It was this simple, but it was the most appropriate way to fully express Mo Baiyan's clean temperament. Chapter 1636. For example, right now, Yu Qingyue was standing 3 steps away from Gu Xingyin, looking at the young man who was casually standing in the same spot. The golden sunlight fell on her face, and her fair skin seemed to be transparent. She opened her glass-like eyes and looked at him in confusion. Her black hair obediently fell behind her ears, revealing her flawless and beautiful face. Hiss. Uchinue couldn't help but take a step back while holding her chest. It was simply too lethal. Gu Xingyin frowned and looked at her. What's wrong with you? Uchinue answered very honestly, I was mesmerized by your beauty. Gu Xingyin, seeing her helpless look, Uchinue knew that she thought she was joking again. She pursed her lips and said, now I'm really glad that you look like a boy. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to keep my title as the campus belle. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows. I thought you didn't care about these things. Uchinue spread her hands. I don't care now, but who knows if I won't care in the future. She looked at Gu Xingyin and said, I know why you're so popular. Also, if I'm not wrong, although you're very popular in class, there shouldn't be many girls who want to confess to you, right? Gu Xingyin was surprised. How did you know? Uchinue smiled foolishly. He, I know, but I'm not telling you. The reason was simple. When Uchinue saw Gu Xingyin under the sun, although she was mesmerized by his beauty, she didn't have any romantic thoughts in her heart. Although girls liked to look at faces, when they were looking for a boyfriend, they wanted to find someone who could give them a sense of security and protect them. They didn't want someone like Gu Xingyin, who looked more beautiful and delicate than herself. At first glance, she felt that she should be pampered and protected in the palm of her hand. Just like Uchinue, when she looked at Gu Xingyin's face, she thought, ah, he's so cute. I want to be friends with him and give him chocolate. Such a cute boy, I must protect him well. As Uchinue thought about it, she didn't know where her thoughts had flown off to. A strange smile unconsciously appeared on her face. Gu Xingyin felt a little flustered as she watched. She reached out and waved her hand in front of Uchinue's eyes. What are you thinking about? I still haven't told you why you're looking for me. Uchinue came back to her senses and finally remembered why she was looking for Gu Xingyin. Thinking of this matter, her expression immediately became serious. She looked at Gu Xingyin and said in a heavy tone, my brother said that he wants to see you. Gu Xingyin, miss, your tone makes me feel that meeting your brother is the same as courting death. Uchinue sighed and looked at Gu Xingyin with guilt. It's all my fault, Bei. Didn't I feel like you dumped me back then? In a fit of anger, I asked my brother's subordinates to teach you a lesson. In the end, my brother found out about you. Gu Xingyin was surprised to hear this. So your brother wants to see me, the scumbag who dumped his sister, and teach me a lesson? Uchinue shook her head. No, my brother didn't think it was a big deal that I was dumped. Gu Xingyin was puzzled when she heard this. Then why did her brother want to see her? Uchinue continued, 2 days ago, my brother thought of this matter and I casually mentioned it. We became good friends and my brother became interested in you. Chapter 1637. Uchinue's face was bitter. It's all my fault. My brother probably wants to meet the person who can coax me to be his friend after dumping me. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She asked tentatively, so, your brother doesn't mean any harm to me, does he? Uchinue nodded. That's right. He doesn't mean any harm. He just wants to see you. Gu Xingyin felt a little relieved. But soon, she saw Uchinue's sad face. Even if my brother doesn't mean any harm, he's still very scary. Gu Xingyin was speechless. Just how scary was this person to be able to make his own sister so scared? In the end, Uchinue could only pat Gu Xingyin's shoulder and look like she was on her own. Since my brother said that he wants to see you, he will definitely come to see you soon. But don't be too scared. I told him that you're my good friend. He won't make things difficult for you. Gu Xingyin really wanted to tease her. Uchinue, although you say that, your expression doesn't sound convincing at all. She asked, when will your brother come to see me? Yu Qingyue shook her head. I don't know. It depends on his mood. Gu Xingyin sighed helplessly. Doesn't that mean you didn't tell me? Yu Qingyue imitated her and sighed. I'm just giving you a heads up in advance. If anything unusual happens, you'll be mentally prepared. Gu Xingyin was speechless. She felt that this girl's description was a little scary. In the end, Gu Xingyin knew nothing except that Yu Qingyue's brother was coming to see her. After parting with Yu Qingyue, Gu Xingyin returned to her seat. She asked the system to bring up Yu Qingyue's brother's information. The system said, this character only has a background after the original plot, so other than the general information, there is no extra information. Gu Xingyin looked at the information provided by the system. Yu Qingyun, male, 28 years old, the prince of the largest underground force in Chuannan City's Xi province. Although he was the crown prince, he was actually the person in charge of the entire Xi province. This was because the nominal leader, the father of the Yu siblings, had been living abroad for a long time. He had almost handed over all the power in the country to his son. Regarding this uncrowned king of the Xi Victory underground world, other than these few lines, there was no other additional information. Gu Xingyin didn't even know what his personality was like. Forget it, I'll just take it one step at a time. Just as Yu Qingyue had said, he didn't have any grudges with the other party, so they shouldn't make things difficult for him. After school, Gu Xingyin went home as usual. Not long after he left the school gate, he was stopped by someone. Gu Xingyin looked up and saw that it was a familiar face. It was the buzzcut young man who had brought people to stop him not long ago. But this time, the buzzcut young man didn't wear an eye-catching hip-hop shirt. He was dressed normally and looked quite handsome. Looking at his appearance, Gu Xingyin nodded. Luckily, the buzzcut young man didn't wear a black suit and sunglasses in broad daylight like in some TV dramas, as if he was afraid that people wouldn't know that he was a gangster. This time, the buzzcut young man was very polite to Gu Xingyin. Our young master wants to see you. Chapter 1638. Gu Xingyin raised her eyebrows and said directly, lead the way. Seeing that she agreed without hesitation, the man with the buzz cut felt strange and asked, aren't you surprised at all? Gu Xingyin said, your eldest daughter came to me today and said that her brother wanted to see me. She looked at the man with the buzz cut and said lazily, besides, if I said I didn't want to go, would you let me go home? The man with the buzz cut shook his head without hesitation, no. Since the eldest young master wants to see you, you have to go. That's it. Why should I waste my breath? Gu Xingyin said indifferently, let's go. I'm also curious about what the eldest young master looks like. The man with the buzz cut didn't say anything but opened the door for Gu Xingyin. About a minute later, the car stopped in a tea house. Gu Xingyin looked up at the antique plaque at the door of the tea house and secretly guessed the preferences of the eldest young master of the Yu family. She didn't show anything on her face and followed the man with the buzz cut into the tea house. The tea house had more than one floor. As soon as Gu Xingyin entered the door, she could see that there were many small independent rooms in the hall on the first floor. Many guests were tasting tea. But the front desk didn't greet them. The man with the buzz cut didn't even look to the side and directly led Gu Xingyin upstairs. They didn't stop on the second floor until they reached the third floor. The man with the buzz cut stood on the last wooden step and said to Gu Xingyin, the eldest young master is upstairs. You can go in by yourself. Obviously, he didn't intend to go up with Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin nodded to him and turned to walk forward. She was wondering why the man with the buzz cut didn't make it clear. What if she couldn't find the room? But when she got closer, she realized why the man with the buzz cut didn't tell her. There was only one room on the third floor. The door was closed. There was no doorbell on the wooden door. Gu Xingyin gently knocked on the door twice. Come in. A clear and slow male voice sounded. Gu Xingyin pushed the door open and walked in. This was a very large tea room. A man was sitting on a chair by the balcony. Beside him was a wooden fence with 2 pots of green plants. In front of him was a small round wooden table with a tea set on it. Next to it was a small stove with a pot of boiling water. In this day and age, there were actually people who made their own tea. Because of the light, Gu Xingyin couldn't see the man's face clearly. However, just by sitting there casually, coupled with the antique decorations around him, it made people feel as if they had entered a famous painting passed down from the last century. Seeing Gu Xingyin enter the door, the man raised his head and said in a gentle tone, "The guest is here. Please have a seat." He didn't get up and casually greeted Gu Xingyin as if she was an old friend. Gu Xingyin didn't stand on ceremony. She walked over and sat opposite him. This time, she finally saw the man's face clearly. He was like a bandit gentleman carved out of jade. Gu Xingyin really felt that the way this man sat quietly with his eyes lowered was like a rare piece of jade. Who would have thought that the famous young master of the Yu family in the Sea province's underground world was actually such a handsome man? Chapter 1639. She raised her head and saw a small wooden cabinet opposite her. The top of the cabinet was divided into many small compartments with different names. All of them were rare tea leaves. Mo Beiyi. The man's pleasant voice brought Gu Xingyin back to reality. She smiled. "I am Mo Beiyi. Are you Qin Yu's brother?" Her tone was very natural, as if she was facing a good friend's brother and not some underworld prince. In fact, the real Mo Beiyi would not know Yu Qinyan's identity. Yu Qinyan had not met someone who could talk to him so freely for a long time. He looked at the young master in front of him seriously. It had to be said that good-looking people always had privileges. At least now, Yu Qinyan looked at the beautiful young man who was sitting comfortably on the chair and squinting his eyes like a cat. His heart softened strangely. This was a rare thing for young Master Yu. Young Master Yu had always been a person who followed his heart. He thought for a while and stretched out his right hand. "I am Yu Qin Yu's brother, Yu Qinyan. Yun as in Wentingyun." If the buzz-cut guy was beside him and saw this scene, he would probably widen his eyes. When did young master become so easy to talk to? And he even lowered himself to take the initiative to shake hands with him. Others did not know, but he had been with young master for so many years. He knew very well that although young master looked gentle and handsome on the outside, he was actually more arrogant than anyone else. If he did not like someone, no matter what, he would not even touch a finger of that person. This young man called him Mo Beiyi. How did he catch young master's eye? It was not only the buzz-cut guy who did not understand. In fact, even Yu Qinyan himself did not know why his heart softened when he saw the young man. Gu Xingyin looked at the hand that was stretched out in front of her. This pair of hands was fair and beautiful, with slender joints. It was a pair of hands that could make people scream. She put her hand on top of it. It was the same fair and soft hand, but it looked much slimmer than the former's. When they held each other like this, it was exceptionally harmonious. Both sides formally greeted each other. Gu Xingyin went straight to the point. "I don't know. Why are you looking for me?" Yu Qinyan frowned slightly because of the way Gu Xingyin addressed her. With his status, there were many people who addressed him as Sir, and he was used to being addressed with honorifics. But that didn't include the young man in front of him. He felt that the person in front of him shouldn't be so distant. "Change the way you address me." He spoke as his heart moved. "Gu Xingyin. Is there a problem?" She saw that the young man in front of her had a blank look on his face. His crystal-clear eyes reflected her own figure, and they were filled with pure confusion. Judging from his skills, this young man was clearly an expert. But when he looked at people, he always had a pure naivety. Such a contrast had a strong attraction to most people. Yu Qingyun felt that she had probably become one of these people. He said gently, "You are Qingyue's good friend. You can call me Big Brother, or Big Brother Yu." Gu Xingyin blinked. She deeply felt that Yu Qingyue was probably tricking her on purpose. The person in front of her was obviously easy to talk to. "Yu Qingyue. I'm not taking the blame for this." Chapter 1640. Gu Xingyin readily accepted his advice and said with a smile, "Brother Yu." It was okay to call him Brother Yu, but he couldn't bring himself to call him Brother Yu. Gu Xingyin felt relieved when he felt that the other party didn't want to cause trouble for him. The environment here was good and the atmosphere was great. It was like a different world from the bustling and fast-paced city of southern Sichuan. Gu Xingyin took a deep breath in satisfaction as he sniffed the tea fragrance in the room. He closed his eyes and revealed a satisfied smile. Yu Qingyun looked at the young man sitting across from him without blinking. His eyes were closed. At this distance, with Yu Qingyun's eyesight, he could clearly see the young man's long and thick eyelashes. They were like small fans covering the young man's eyes. They trembled slightly with the owner's eyes. Yu Qingyun's gaze moved down and fell on the young man's lips. He remembered reading a foreign poem a long time ago. In the poem, the poet used a metaphor to describe his first love. Her sweet lips were like rose petals in the morning dew, beautiful and fragrant. At that time, Yu Qingyun scoffed at this. He thought that only people who blindly fell in love would have beautiful eyes. How could there be such a beautiful person in this world? But now, Yu Qingyun felt that he was wrong. The young man's lips weren't thin. They were slightly pouted. The color was between a light pink and a gorgeous red. The shape of his lips was perfect. It made people want to go up and taste it. Yu Qingyun's expression changed. He actually had a physiological reaction to a young man he just met for the first time. Yu Qingyun's body moved slightly and he inadvertently changed his sitting position. At this time, Gu Xingyin felt his gaze. She then remembered that there was someone sitting across from her. She was a bit embarrassed. Yu Qingyun just looked at her and asked, "I saw you looking at the tea when you came in. Do you know tea?" Of course, Gu Xingyin knew about it. In fact, he was quite proficient in it. Mo Bei also learned some tea from his grandmother when he was young. It was just that he didn't have time to study it. Hearing Yu Qingyun's question, Gu Xingyin nodded, "I know a little." Yu Qingyue smiled. Then, "Kitano-suk, do you mind brewing a pot of tea for me?" Gu Xingyin saw that Yu Qingyun liked tea. She also had the idea of making friends with him. She nodded, "I can try." Gu Xingyin stood up just as the water on the stove was boiling. Yu Qingyun was still sitting there, his gaze firmly locked onto the figure that was slightly bent over to make tea. Gu Xingyin's movements could be described as smooth as flowing water. It could be seen that she did not only know a thing or two as she claimed. Without more than 10 years of hard work, one would not be able to achieve this level of maturity. When the fragrance of the tea rose, Yu Qingyun's gaze moved down from the young man's face. Because of the height of the table, Gu Xingyin's body was slightly bent over. This movement caused the tight clothes to stretch and tightly stick to her back, completely revealing her beautiful waist. Yu Qingyun's gaze tightly locked onto that part of her body. He secretly sighed in his heart. Such a slender waist, he was afraid that he could hold it with one hand. Wait a minute. He coughed and unnaturally moved his gaze away. Chapter 1641. When he raised his head again, Yu Qingyun met Gu Xingyin's puzzled gaze. "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" Gu Xingyin asked. Yu Qingyun calmly said, "I'm fine." Seeing that he was fine, Gu Xingyin continued to make tea. This time, Yu Qingyun's gaze was serious as he watched the youth use his white jade-like hands to hold the teapot. The clear water turned into a thin line as it poured into the cup filled with tea leaves. In an instant, mist-like water rose from the cup. At the same time, the mist spread out and lingered around the entire tea room. A trace of admiration flashed through Yu Qingyun's eyes. He loved tea and understood tea. So he always had a good impression of people who were proficient in this technique. Not to mention, he already had a good impression of Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin placed a cup of tea in front of Yu Qingyun. Try it. She also held a cup in her hand and sat across from Yu Qingyun. Gently brushing away the foam, Gu Xingyin took a sip of the tea in the cup. Her eyes lit up. At the same time, Yu Qingyun's praise sounded. Good technique. Gu Xingyin lightly smiled and shook her head. It's good tea. If it wasn't for these top-quality tea leaves, it wouldn't have been able to make such an effect. Yu Qingyun shook her head. No, if there wasn't someone who could make tea, this tea would have been wasted. The two looked at each other and smiled. That afternoon, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyun chatted for a long time. The more they talked, the more amazed Yu Qingyun was. Her eyes were full of splendor as she looked at the youth in front of her. He was clearly so young and his sister Qingyue was addicted to comic books all day long. But Mo Bei seemed to understand everything. And this kind of understanding wasn't superficial, but true mastery. Until Gu Xingyin received a call from home. Old Madame Mo worriedly asked why she hadn't returned home yet. Speaking of which, the Mo family's attitude towards Gu Xingyin had completely changed since they found out that their grandson was not their grandson but their granddaughter. Sons were meant to be trained, while daughters were meant to be spoiled. What's more, this daughter of his had been treated unfairly for more than 10 years. Now, Gu Xingyin was treated like the apple of everyone's eye in the Mo family. She was the kind of person who would not even give her the moon if she asked for it. However, she wasn't spoiled at all. Instead, she changed her previous rebellious attitude and became extremely obedient. This made her even more lovable. Usually, Gu Xingyin would return home on time after school. Today, it was already dark and she still hadn't returned home. Naturally, her family was worried. After Gu Xingyin answered the call, he casually said a few words before hanging up. She raised her head, but before she could say anything, Yu Qingyun said considerately, "I didn't think it through and made your family worry." Gu Xingyin smiled. "I forgot to tell my family." Yu Qingyun stood up. "Let me send you home." Gu Xingyin glanced at the dark night sky outside and didn't refuse. She wasn't old enough to own a car yet. It was much more convenient for Yu Qingyun to send her home rather than taking a taxi. When Gu Xingyin stepped out of the door, she saw the buzz-cut young man standing outside. When he heard that the young master was going to personally send Gu Xingyin home, the buzz-cut young man was dumbfounded. He had been with the young master for so many years. Why didn't he know that the young master was such a warm-hearted person? He followed behind and watched from afar as the young master personally opened the car door for Mo Bei. The young master turned around and looked at him, who was in a daze. "You can go home on your own. You don't have to follow me." Chapter 1642. The crew-cut young man felt that he might have seen a fake young master. However, he didn't dare say anything in front of Yu Qingyun. He obediently watched as the low-key black car disappeared into the night. When Gu Xingyin got out of the car, Yu Qingyun called out to her. He handed Gu Xingyin a business card. "My contact information is on it. If you need anything in the future, you can look for me." Gu Xingyin glanced at it. She didn't seem to realize what the business card meant at all. She smiled and took it. "Okay." She got out of the car and turned around to wave at Yu Qingyun. Yu Qingyun watched as her voice disappeared before he turned the car around and drove away. The next day, the moment Gu Xingyin entered the school, she saw Yu Qingyue waiting outside the classroom. Yu Qingyue looked a little nervous. When she saw Gu Xingyin, she hurriedly pulled her to the side. There were a few students passing by. When they saw this scene, a tacit smile appeared on their faces. Yu Qingyue didn't care about their misunderstanding. She pulled her a little nervously and asked, "My brother didn't do anything to you yesterday, right?" Gu Xingyin was speechless. "Girl, your words sound very misleading," she asked in confusion. "What could he do to me?" Yu Qingyue heaved a sigh of relief when she saw her like this. Last night, when Yu Qingyue's brother came home, she was sitting in the living room eating chips. Yu Qingyun frowned. "I told you to eat less junk food." Yu Qingyue smiled obsequiously. "I just ate a little." "Oh yeah, brother, why did you come home so late today?" Her brother had OCD. He basically didn't come home at a fixed time, so this situation was very abnormal. Yu Qingyue took off her suit jacket and said, "I went to see Mo Bei." Yu Qingyue was speechless. She looked at her brother sitting on the sofa and gulped. She said carefully, "Then, brother, you and him?" Yu Qingyun looked at his sister's nervous face and knew that she was worried about Mo Bei. He didn't know why, but he felt a little unhappy. He said faintly, "I chatted with him for a while. I think he's a good person." Being fancied by his brother was not something worth celebrating. At least, that was what Yu Qinyu knew. She still wanted to ask about the situation in a roundabout way, but was chased back to her bedroom by Yu Qingyun. Yu Qingyue, who had been on tenterhooks all night, woke up early in the morning and rushed to school. Seeing the undisguised worry on her face, Gu Xingyin felt warmth in his heart. But then, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was her brother that scary in this girl's heart? She felt that Yu Qingyun was quite good. When she said this, she saw Yu Qingyue's expression as if she had seen a ghost. Yu Qingyue thought she might be hallucinating. "You think my brother is a good person?" Gu Xingyin nodded her head. "His looks are perfect, his temperament is outstanding, his demeanor is elegant, he is knowledgeable and knowledgeable. Most importantly, your brother is very amiable and gentlemanly. He even personally sent me home." Yu Qingyue, "I'm probably hallucinating." "No, other than hallucinating, I might also be hallucinating." In this world, there was actually someone who admired her brother so much. Forget about the description at the beginning. After all, her brother's appearance and temperament were indeed good. But the latter part, amiable, gentlemanly. What the hell was that? Did her brother have that kind of thing? Chapter 1643. Gu Xingyin was a little suspicious when he saw Yu Qingyue's shocked expression in front of him. Yu Qingyue held Gu Xingyin's hand and said earnestly, "Bei, you must keep your eyes open. Don't be fooled by my brother's facade. Let me tell you, he is a..." She frowned as she said this, as if she was afraid of something and did not continue. Gu Xingyin looked at Yu Qingyue suspiciously. She still could not understand why Yu Qingyue seemed so repulsed by her brother. Could it be that Yu Qingyue was like Mo Bei in the past, a teenager? Was that why she was so rebellious and repulsed by her parents who tried so hard to persuade her? Gu Xingyin thought about it carefully and felt that she might have found the truth. However, this was between the two siblings and she could not say anything. She could only smile at Yu Qingyue. Yu Qingyue looked at Gu Xingyin's expression of understanding. She thought that Gu Xingyin had taken her advice and was very satisfied. Therefore, both parties thought that they had found the truth and ended the conversation happily. Gu Xingyin did not see Yu Qingyun for a period of time after that. Yu Qingyue was happy to see this. She thought that her brother had gone to see Bei previously and treated him so gentlemanly. She thought that her brother was having a fit. Now, it was obvious that her brother had returned to normal and lost interest in Mo Bei. But in reality, Yu Qingyue was still too naive. Yu Qingyun was only hesitating during this period of time. When he finally made up his mind, it would be time for him to make his move. Grandma has something to ask you. Old Madame Mo and Old Master Mo had been staying in Chuannan City for the past 2 months because of their granddaughter's matter. They did not return to the small city they had settled down in. Gu Xingyin replied obediently, "Go ahead." When they were at home, they all called her Mo Beiyan. Old Madame Mo and the rest felt that it would be fine if they didn't know about Bai Yan's identity in the past. However, now that they knew about Bai Yan's true identity, they still called her Bai Yi in a house where no one else was around. It was a form of harm to her. Old Madame Mo looked at her granddaughter's neat short hair and loose white t-shirt. She couldn't help but feel a little sad. Girls of this age were at the age where they cared about their appearance. Which one of them didn't wear a skirt and secretly put on makeup? She collected her thoughts and said lovingly to Gu Xingyin, "Your grandfather and I plan to return to South City in the near future. We want to ask if you want to go back to South City with us." Nanqing was where old Madame Mo and her husband had settled down. This was the result of a discussion between old Madame Mo and old Master Mo. If Gu Xingyin followed him to Nanqing, no one would recognize her there. Everything could start over, and she could live like a normal girl. Moreover, they were worried that the events of the past few years would cast a shadow in their granddaughter's heart. They thought that a change of environment would be better. However, Gu Xingyin did not have such concerns. Her mission target was still in Chuannan City. Of course, there was no longer any conflict between her and Yu Qingyue. There was also, Gu Xingyin collected her thoughts and said with a smile, "I think I'll continue to stay in Chuannan. I'm used to the teachers and classmates in school. Next year is the college entrance exam. I'm afraid I won't be used to a new place." Chapter 1644. For a rich kid like Mo Bei, having a diploma wasn't that important. However, having such an excellent piece of paper was still something to be proud of. Their granddaughter did not seem to have done anything wrong because of that incident. Since she was so motivated, the two elders of the Mo family naturally had no reason to take her away. Despite their reluctance, Gu Xingyin could only promise several times that she would be there to accompany them during the summer break. In the following days, she spent her days studying and having fun as usual. The only change was that Yu Qingyue and Gu Xingyin's relationship was getting better. On Friday night, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue agreed to go shopping together the next day. After hanging up the phone, she heard the system's emotional voice. The host's ability to turn enemies into best friends is really extraordinary. Gu Xingyin smiled and replied, "You're flattering me." She was already used to the system's occasional sighs. Moreover, Gu Xingyin felt that as he experienced more missions and became more familiar with the system seemed to be no longer as cold as it was in the beginning. Although its voice was still calm and emotionless, there was not a trace of emotion. However, the words that he spoke sounded a little more humane. She did not know if it was an illusion, but Gu Xingyin kept this matter in her heart. The next day, Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue agreed to meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. After breakfast and saying goodbye to her family, Gu Xingyin refused to let the family's chauffeur send her. She simply hailed a taxi and left. "Bei." Yu Qingyue looked at Mo Bei and waved. Gu Xingyin walked over. Although it was called shopping, it was basically Yu Qingyue shopping while Gu Xingyin occasionally gave her advice and carried her bags. At first, Yu Qingyue subconsciously complained, "It's rare for us to go shopping together. Why are you just watching me shop?" Then, she remembered Gu Xingyin's current state. She felt awkward. Yu Qingyue stuck out her tongue in embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Bei. I forgot about you." Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I don't care. I'll just buy some clothes later." Yu Qingyue quickly shook her head and said with a serious face, "You are so handsome. How can you buy clothes casually?" She glanced at Gu Xingyin and suddenly smiled. She leaned forward and whispered, "Although it's a pity that I can't see you in women's clothes, you're so good looking. Even if you wear men's clothes, you'll still be able to beat a bunch of handsome guys. I'll be your advisor later. I'll definitely buy 2 sets to make you even more attractive." Gu Xingyin facepalmed. Whatever. She compromised so easily because she understood Yu Qingyue's character. This young lady was probably very favored at home. If you didn't agree to her goal, she would have 100 ways to make you have no choice but to agree. Gu Xingyin didn't want to test her tolerance and waste time on this matter, so she just let Yu Qingyue do whatever she wanted. The shop assistant looked at the two of them and smiled. "The two of you seem to have a good relationship." Obviously, she had misunderstood their relationship and thought that they were a sweet couple who were in a relationship at a young age. There was no way to explain this. Yu Qingyue, on the other hand, was very carefree. She felt that it was very interesting to be misunderstood as a couple with Gu Xingyin. She smiled and held Gu Xingyin's arm. "Right? I think so too. Bei and I have a good relationship." Chapter 1645. The two of them went shopping in the morning and bought several sets of clothes. They ate lunch together and went to the amusement park in the afternoon. After a day, Gu Xingyin felt that the holiday was much more tiring than school. Gu Xingyin and Yu Qingyue only parted ways when the sky turned dark. The two of them went home separately. When Yu Qingyue got home, she found her older brother sitting on the sofa in an unusual manner. Seeing her come home, Yu Qingyue said slowly, "You're back." Yu Qingyue expressed that she was flattered by this sudden concern. She handed the things in her hands to the nanny to carry back to her room. She poured herself a glass of orange juice and sat on the sofa. "I'm so tired." Yu Qingyin's face didn't show any emotions. He only asked, "Tired? Did you have fun?" Yu Qingyue took a sip of her drink and answered casually, "I had fun." But after she answered, she felt a little strange. Although she didn't feel any unhappiness from her brother's tone, based on her 10 years of experience with her brother, Yu Qingyue subconsciously felt that her brother was in a bad mood. As soon as this thought came to her mind, Yu Qingyue's entire body tensed up. She even became careful when she drank her drink. She didn't dare make a sound. Although her brother doted on her a lot, no one wanted to provoke an angry Yu Qingyun. She finished the drink in one gulp and immediately stood up with a smile. Brother, I just remembered that I have a lot of homework this weekend. I'll go upstairs and do it first, sit down." Yu Qingyun only said these 2 words, which successfully made Yu Qingyue freeze and sit back down. Oh no, oh no. Originally, it was just a hunch. But now, Yu Qingyue was sure that her brother was unhappy. And the reason for his unhappiness was most likely related to her. "God wants me to die." Yu Qingyue tried hard to recall what she had done recently. She really didn't provoke the devil. "Yu Qingyue, I didn't teach you that puppy love is wrong," said Yu Qingyun indifferently. "Huh?" Yu Qingyue was confused. She thought about it carefully and answered honestly, "No." Yu Qingyun, he didn't say anything, but Yu Qingyue felt a little cold around her. Yu Qingyue cursed under her breath and immediately revealed a flattering smile. "Brother, you see, you were the one who raised me since I was young, right? You've taught me so well, how could I not know that puppy love is wrong? I don't need you to teach me that." Yu Qingyun nodded. "Your flattery is not bad." Yu Qingyue was overjoyed, thinking that she had escaped a calamity. The next moment, her brother spoke again. "But no matter how beautiful your words are, you still have to be punished if you do something wrong." Yu Qingyue, Yu Qingyun's sharp eyes looked at Yu Qingyue, "I'll give you a chance to confess. What is your relationship with Mo Bei?" Huh? Why did it involve Beiyi again? Yuchinue couldn't understand her brother's train of thought. She answered instinctively, me and Beiyi. It doesn't matter, does it? Yuchinyun looked at her. Thinking of her brother's words, Yuchinue immediately understood that her brother must have misunderstood her. She had to clarify as soon as possible. Yuchinue quickly said, brother, you really have to believe me this time. I admit that at first, I was enlightened by his beauty and had some inexplicable feelings for Beiyi. But soon, I realized that Beiyi and I are really pure and good friends. A pair of good friends. The kind that can't be any purer. Chapter 1646. After Yuchinue said this, she looked at her brother nervously. Actually, she didn't understand why her brother had such a big reaction to the news of puppy love. In the beginning, he didn't even care. When Yuchinyun heard Yuchinue's words, he slowly repeated his sister's words. Good friends. Yuchinue nodded profusely. Yes, I don't think there's anything ambiguous about it. She thought about it and decided to sell her friend out for her own safety. Brother, you've seen Bei before. She's even prettier than me. If I were to find a boyfriend like her, wouldn't I be looking for trouble? If I were to meet someone on the road, I don't think they'd be interested in me. Yuchinyun's gaze swept across Yuchinue's face and he nodded in agreement. You do know your place. Yuchinue was speechless. Brother, you're really my biological brother. How could you mock your biological sister like this? But at least they were over this hurdle. Yuchinue had just heaved a sigh of relief when she heard her brother say, but in the past, you were the one who said you were heartbroken and wanted to teach that guy a lesson. Yuchinue was speechless. She wished she could transmigrate back in time and slap herself in the face. Why did she have to complain about such a small matter? Yuchinue swore that she wasn't even as nervous as she was when she faced her class teacher. She smiled and said, weren't I young back then? I've never been in a relationship before, so when I saw a good-looking guy, I thought I liked him. Actually, I'm fine with it. Brother, if I really liked Bei, why would I be good friends with her? In her heart, she was actually saying, I want to like her, but she's the same gender as me. When Yuchinyun heard this, he was finally satisfied. He asked, in other words, you don't like Mo Bei at all? You're just normal friends with him? Yuchinue nodded. Yuchinyun said, that's good. Yuchinue was speechless. Yuchinyun said casually, because I like him and want to pursue him. Yuchinue was speechless. Her mouth was agape, as if this was the first time she had met her brother. This sesame stuffing was evil. No. That was not the main point. Yuchinue looked strangely conflicted. But brother, Beiyi, is a man. She was still loyal and did not reveal Gu Xingyin's biggest secret. Yuchinyun glanced at her. So what? So what? Who would dare to say anything about what Yuchinyun wanted to do? Yuchinue felt a headache coming on. To be honest, she didn't think her brother was a good lover at all. It was rare for her to see eye to eye with Mo Bei. She did not want her good friend to be ruined. If Yuchinyun could hear her sister's inner thoughts, she would probably be so angry that she wanted to beat her up. How could she mock her own brother like that? Yuchinyue said tentatively, our father won't allow you to find a man. Yuchinyun said, you don't have to worry about that. I naturally have a way to solve it. Yuchinyue put up a final struggle. I remember that you don't like men. Yuchinyun said faintly, I've never liked a woman, who knows? Yuchinyue, my friend, this is all I can help you with. Yuchinyue looked at her sister suspiciously. You look like you don't want me to like Mo Bei. Chapter 1647. Yuchinyue thought to herself, isn't that right? I really don't want you to harm her. However, she had always been a coward in front of her brother, so when her brother glanced at her coldly, she immediately shut her mouth. Yu Qingyun was very satisfied with his sister's tactfulness. He stood up and said, I still have something to do, so I'll go take care of it. Have a good rest. Yu Qingyue silently watched as her brother's figure disappeared down the stairs. The next day, Gu Xingyin saw Yu Qingyue, who looked like she wanted to say something. You didn't sleep well last night, she asked suspiciously. The dark circles under Yu Qingyue's eyes were so obvious that she couldn't ignore it. Yu Qingyue looked at the delicious Gu Xingyin, lamented in her heart that the handsome young man was going to be eaten by her brother, the big bad wolf. She looked at Gu Xingyin uneasily and said, Bei Yi, I have something to ask you. Gu Xingyin nodded and said, Go ahead. Yu Qingyue looked at Gu Xingyin and asked, Do you have any thoughts of dating? Gu Xingyin hesitated for a moment at the question. She looked at Yu Qingyue strangely, wondering if she still hadn't given up after knowing that she was a girl. She didn't hide her expression, so Yu Qingyue immediately saw through her. Yu Qingyue was speechless. She said unhappily, Don't worry, I'm not interested in the same gender. Gu Xingyin was finally relieved. She pointed at herself. Look at me now. Boys won't like me because I'm also a boy. If girls like me, I won't be together with them. Do you think I'll have the idea of falling in love? Yu Qingyue thought about it and agreed, but her brother didn't care about this. She asked again, then, what if someone doesn't care about your gender and wants to be with you? Gu Xingyin thought that someone was confessing to her through Yu Qingyue. She said without hesitation, I'm not interested. I have someone I like. Yu Qingyue's mood didn't improve because of this answer. This was because her brother had never failed to get what he wanted. But when she looked at Gu Xingyin in front of her, she couldn't bring herself to say, My brother likes you. In the end, she left with a conflicted expression. Gu Xingyin looked at her back view in confusion. So, why did Yu Qingyue ask her to come here? Yu Qingyue knew that her brother wouldn't let her go, but she didn't expect him to act so quickly. After school, she happened to be looking for Gu Xingyin. When she arrived at Gu Xingyin's class, she was told that Mo Bei had been taken away. Not long after Yu Qingyue walked out of the school gate, she met the man with the buzz cut. Seeing her, the buzz-cut man walked over and said, Young master asked my miss to go home. Yu Qingyue looked at the buzz-cut man in surprise. Why are you here? Tease, of the tease of tea. Qingyin nodded. Yu Qingyue sighed in her heart. What a beast. Qingyin looked at Yu Qingyue's expression and lowered his head. Young master asked me to escort you home and pass a message to you. Yu Qingyue felt that it wasn't something good, but she still asked, What message? Qingyin replied, Tell Yu Qingyue to go back by herself. Also, don't meddle in his business. His business probably meant that he wanted to pursue Gu Xingyin. Chapter 1648. Yu Qingyue said angrily, Does he think that my sister is a troublemaker? As soon as she asked the question, she realized who she was asking. Yu Qingyue looked at the man with the buzz cut, who seemed to be struggling to say something. She suddenly said, Stop answering. This guy was one of her brother's most honest men. Yu Qingyue was very afraid that he would really say, yes. On the other hand, Gu Xingyin didn't know about Yu Qingyue's dilemma. She saw Yu Qingyun standing by the flower bed not long after she left the classroom. Gu Xingyin went to Chuanan First High School, which was the best high school in Chuanan City. The school management was very strict. During class, outsiders were not allowed to enter. But Yu Qingyun just had to appear here. Gu Xingyin wasn't surprised. Rules were usually set by a small group of people and served a small group of people. Powerful to such an extent as Yu Qingyun, ordinary rules really did not count for much in his eyes. Yu Qingyun wasn't dressed very formally. Instead, he was dressed very casually. Yu Qingyun seemed to be different from the gentleman whom Gu Xingyin saw in the tea room last time. Yu Qingyun, who was dressed casually, walked on campus. She looked like a college student who was still in school. While Gu Xingyin was walking in his direction, he saw at least two girls walking over to strike up a conversation with him. However, Yu Qingyun rejected them. "What a coincidence to meet you here." Gu Xingyin greeted him with a smile. She asked, "Are you here for Qinyue? She should be coming down soon." Yu Qingyun looked at the young man in front of him and shook his head. "No, I'm here for you." "For me?" Gu Xingyin was surprised. "Why are you looking for me?" she asked. Yu Qingyun suddenly turned around. "Come with me." He turned and walked toward the school gate. Gu Xingyin followed behind in confusion and asked, "Aren't we waiting for Qinyue?" Even though Yu Qingyun was her biological sister, Yu Qingyun was still a little unhappy when she heard Yu Qinyue call her Qinyue. He said lightly, "Qinyue has someone to send her back." Gu Xingyin didn't say anything. She didn't know where Yu Qingyun was taking her, but she knew that this man wouldn't do anything bad to her. At the school gate, a familiar black car was parked there. Gu Xingyin's sharp eyes noticed that it was the car that Yu Qingyun drove the last time. Yu Qingyun opened the car door for her. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Gu Xingyin frowned. "I thought that if you invited me to do something, you should at least tell me your purpose." There were very few people who could say such righteous words in front of the eldest young master of the Yu family. But Yu Qingyun wasn't angry. In his eyes, the person in front of him was different from the others. So he said in a low voice, "Sorry, I didn't make it clear to you. I've prepared a surprise for you." Gu Xingyin was surprised. "For me?" Yu Qingyun nodded. He still kept the position of opening the car door. Gu Xingyin hesitated for a moment, but she still got in. A faint smile appeared on Yu Qingyin's face. He walked to the driver's seat and sat down. He glanced sideways at Gu Xingyin and suddenly leaned forward. Gu Xingyin's breath stopped for a moment. Chapter 1649. The person beside her was very close to her. He was so close that Gu Xingyin could see his eyelashes clearly. The man's breath instantly invaded Gu Xingyin's world, and her whole body was tense because of this strange invasion. There was a warm breath on her neck. Then, Yu Qingyun fastened the seatbelt for Gu Xingyin. He stepped back, and the invisible aura that enveloped Gu Xingyin seemed to disappear. He didn't seem to notice Gu Xingyin's unnaturalness. Yu Qingyun said, "No matter what car you take in the future, remember to fasten your seatbelt." His tone was not very strict, but Gu Xingyin felt like a primary school student facing the head teacher. She nodded obediently. Yu Qingyun stopped talking. The car started, and soft light music sounded in this quiet space, which relieved Gu Xingyin's previous nervousness. Yu Qingyun saw that she seemed to be relieved from the corner of his eye, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. "By the way." His tone was neither fast nor slow, and his voice was low and magnetic. Listening to it like this, it was very enjoyable. "The place I'm taking you to is a little far. You can tell your family in advance." Gu Xingyin asked subconsciously, "How long will it take?" Yu Qingyue smiled and said, "Maybe we can't go back until night." Gu Xingyin nodded and took out her mobile phone to make a call. Because today was Friday, the school was closed 2 classes earlier than usual, and it was still very early. Yu Qingyun heard Gu Xingyin say on the phone that she was going out with her friends and might be home late. When Gu Xingyin hung up the phone, he asked, "You trust me so much? Aren't you afraid that I'll sell you?" Gu Xingyin was amused by his words. She looked at Yu Qingyun and asked, "Will you?" Her eyes were big and clear, and her pupils were very dark. When she looked at people like this, the other party could easily see their own shadow in her eyes. Yu Qingyun was stunned for a moment before replying, no. Gu Xingyin laughed. Isn't that enough? Yu Qingyun didn't speak again. She just held the steering wheel tightly with both hands. He was afraid that he would not be able to stop himself from stepping on the brakes, fiercely hugging the person beside him, and then. Hold it in, Yu Qingyun, you'll scare him. Yu Qingyun forced herself to calm down in her mind. Damn it, did Mo Bei know how innocent and seductive she looked when she was looking at him with her head tilted to the side and smiling? How attractive would it be to him? Gu Xingyin obviously did not know. Perhaps even if she knew, she wouldn't think that it was her fault. It's obviously your head that's full of impure thoughts. The car drove for about an hour and left the city. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be alarmed. After all, no matter what, this was the first time the two of them had met. However, when Yu Qingyun looked at Gu Xingyin beside her, there was no hesitation on her face. She trusted him without any hesitation. Realizing this, Yu Qingyun felt something warm fermenting in his heart. He couldn't help but show a gentle smile on his face. Gu Xingyin just happened to see this smile. She was stunned for a moment, and then she blushed and looked away. Not only was he so good-looking, but his smile was also so seductive. Was he seducing her? Or was he seducing her? We're here. Just as Gu Xingyin's imagination was running wild, Yu Qingyun reminded Gu Xingyin. Chapter 1650. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses. She got out of the car and looked up to see a very large manor. This is. She was surprised. Yu Qingyun said concisely, I bought a manor a few years ago. Gu Xingyin silently looked at it. Yes, Chuannan City was a very developed city in the country. It was not inferior to the capital. Although this was a suburb and was not as expensive as the city center, it could still be considered expensive. How rich would one have to be to buy a manor here? She followed Yu Qingyun inside. As soon as they entered, a cool breeze hit them. Gu Xingyin felt that the heat on her body had dissipated a lot. Compared to the heat outside, this was a paradise that everyone yearned for in the summer. When they came in, Gu Xingyin realized how big this place was. As she walked forward, her gaze suddenly froze, and even her breathing stopped. Looking up, it was a lotus pond that she could not see the end of. It was the season for lotus flowers to bloom. Countless pink and white lotus flowers swayed with the breeze on the round green lotus leaves. The entire air was filled with the faint fragrance of lotus flowers. Yu Qingyun looked at her and stopped. Seeing her reaction, he was very satisfied. He explained, Do you like it? When I bought the farmstead a few years ago, I had someone plant it. When I saw you last time, although I didn't ask, I felt that you would probably like lotus flowers, so I took the liberty to invite you over to take a look. The flowering period is just right. After a while, it won't be so beautiful. In fact, Yu Qingyun felt that his feeling was very strange. He had only met the youth in front of him once, but when he looked at him, he felt a strange sense of familiarity. He felt that he should know him very well. He did not know where this illusion came from. For example, this lotus pond. When he bought this place to build a manor, his first thought when he saw this living water lake was to plant lotus flowers in it. He felt that there would be someone who would accompany him to see it in the future. That kind of feeling was very strange, but Yu Qingyun rarely did not consider the benefits, and followed her own heart. When she saw Gu Xingyin for the first time, Yu Qingyun felt that she might have found the person who could accompany her to see the lotus flowers. When he brought Gu Xingyin here, he was still a little uncertain. What if she didn't like it? But now that he saw Gu Xingyin's reaction, his heart suddenly calmed down. It seemed that he had made the right move. Gu Xingyin just stood there in a daze. She thought back to the end of the last world. Before He Lu left, he looked at her with regret, saying that he had planted a pond full of lotus flowers for her, but he couldn't accompany her to see them. So now, was Yu Qingyun trying to make up for the regrets of her previous life? Even if he didn't have any memories, his subconscious still remembered that he owed her a pond of lotus flowers. Yu Qingyun kept looking at Gu Xingyin. When he saw her happy and sad expression, his heart was a little uncertain. He walked to Gu Xingyin's side and softly asked her, "You don't like it?" Gu Xingyin came back to her senses and looked at him. She smiled and said, "No, I like it very much." She looked at the endless green in the distance and said in a light voice, "I like lotus flowers the most." Yu Qingyun heard this and also smiled, "It's good that you like it." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.